This is Jocko Podcast number 321 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
So, it's cold, wet, dark. I've been awake for a few days. 19 years old. It's Hell Week. It's kind of crazy, but I'm having fun. A bunch of people have quit. And you have no idea who's going to quit. My boat crew leader quit. He was a prior quitter. So he had already been to Bud's, been to the fleet, realized he didn't want to be in the fleet, gone through the whole administrative rigmarole to get back to Bud's, and he just quit. Watching people quit is crazy. They quit so fast you can't keep track of it. It's just a mass exodus. And so what happens is you're in a boat crew of 6 or 7 guys, organized by height, because you need to be roughly the same height to carry a boat on your head or a log on your shoulder. If you got 6 or 7 guys, you got to be around the same height. So you're organized by height. So as people quit, you get less and less boat crews. You keep lining up to adjust who's in your boat crew. But by late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, things start to settle down, meaning most of the people that are going to quit have quit. And so now you see who's left. And it's, again, you have no idea who is going to quit. And you got all kinds of different people, tall, short, stocky, lean, smart, some not so smart, some introverts, some extroverts. There's no stereotype. There's no stereotype. There might be a public stereotype of what a SEAL is, but it doesn't exist actually in the SEAL teams. You have no idea who's going to make it. Only the big frogman in the sky knows who's going to be a frogman down here on Earth. In my boat crew, end up with some solid guys. One of them is a quiet fella from Kentucky, and he's holding strong. His name is Chris Gifford. Steady as a rock. Calm, stoic, solid. And we kept paddling. And we made it through Hell Week. And we both eventually got assigned to SEAL Team 1 and ended up having some pretty cool experiences together. And he ended up with a career as a SEAL like me, and a ton of lessons learned along the way. And it's an honor to have him here with us tonight to talk about his experiences and share some of those lessons learned. Chris, it's good to see you, man.
You too.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much. This is a bit surreal because I'm a big fan of the show, and just to be here with you and Echo and talk about this stuff. This is it's awesome. So thank you for having me.
We're gonna get into Bud's because I don't remember a lot of Bud's. And so I'm hoping you can fill in some holes along the way. But before we get there, let's start out the beginning. Let's start about where you came from.
Yeah, so I grew up in Kentucky, in Lexington, which is kind of a college town. And it was a great place to grow up, and it's still a great place today. But when I was in high school, I wanted to leave. I was ready to leave.
What'd your mom and dad do?
So my parents were divorced. My mom worked, later on she got remarried. They owned a body shop, so they ran that. And then my father was in not too far away in Louisville, and he ran his own business. He did, it was kind of an answering service for people who did inspections, house inspections. So they would call him, he would set up the appointments, and then just fax the appointments to them. But who was more influential to me was probably my best friend's family. And he was Mr. Hall, he was a great guy, and still is today, but he was retired, or not retired, but he was in Vietnam in the Army. And just kind of an outdoors type person, and was real instrumental in helping me kind of get into that outdoor, not staying inside, getting out and being in nature more. Big hunter, had a lot of guns and stuff, which made me more comfortable around it. And all this stuff made a big difference later on. Because, being from Kentucky, going to San Diego was a big change. And it was pretty evident early that I would have that.
Now, if I remember right, weren't you an electrician or something?
Yeah. So as I was wanting to go into the military, when I was 14, my best friend and I went to Gulfport, Mississippi to visit his uncle, who was a CB chief. And we spent a week there with him, and he was great. He took us to the base, kind of exposed us to all that. And that's when I was like, I think the Navy's a good way to get out of Kentucky. It's a good, good environment. This is the type of culture I want to be in. And my best friend and I at the time were also dive qualified. So we'd already been through like the PADI open water. My friend was big into that. And so that was our hobby. So we go down to Gulfport, Mississippi, and he takes us around, and he said, if you like scuba diving, you might want to look at the SEAL teams. And we're like, well, what are the SEAL teams? So he had the All Hands magazine, which was about, so this was mid-'80s, which was the only information that was out at the time. And we looked through it, and it's like, this sounds cool. I think this would be good. So we tried to do, my friend and I tried to do as much research as we could. And we kind of determined that, and now in the Navy you would call it a POA&M, kind of set up these milestones on how to get to a targeted goal. And I knew that at the time, in order to go to BUDS and be a SEAL, you first had to go to an A school. Mm-hmm. So my thinking was, okay, if I got to do a trade, and they had a list of the different source ratings that you could be to go to BUDS, I figured if I could learn this early, then when I was in A school, I could work out more, and I could focus on going to BUDS. So my high school had a program to go to vocational school half of the day. So the first half you did your whatever required courses, math, English, whatever. And then the second half you left the campus, went to a vocational school, and you studied a trade. And I chose electricity just because a lot of my family were in construction. It was, I would spend some summers working for my uncles as a plumber, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So electrical work was a lot easier. Well, that wasn't easier, but it was cleaner. I wasn't scooping shit. So it was, so I chose, electrical work, and with the whole intent of just learning that, so when I got to A school, I didn't have to study as hard. I could just go to the gym every night.
What was in the All Hands magazine?
It just had
cool pictures.
Well, it had the pictures, like, but it kind of outlined, this is what you have to do to go to BUDS. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to so many pull-ups. So it's the times on your runs, your swims. They talked about the source ratings. So it was all about just kind of how to get into it. Very little was about what they actually did.
Did you read any books? There's a couple books that predated you and I going in the military, going in the Navy. Did you read any of those? I didn't read any of them.
No. I when I was in high school, I was a mediocre student at best. I knew to join the Navy, all I had to do was graduate with a 3.0 C, and that's all I did.
Did you do any athletics?
I did. I was a runner, and I ran distance, and that was because I was like I am now, but very thin, long legs, and I think it was like 135 at the time.
What's distance? So what kind of distances? So
for track was the 2 mile, or it was the 2 mile run, the 1 mile run, and the half mile, or 880. So my high school, it was mostly all sprinters, and there were very few distance runners. So it was good that the coach kind of left us alone, and that's all I did was just go in and run miles and miles every day. And so that was kind of my strong point. I did swim, but I didn't do the type of swimming that I probably did to be competitive. I mean, I think around my group of friends, I was probably a very good swimmer, and I think compared to the general population today.
You were a good swimmer amongst your 9 friends in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, exactly. So, but running was definitely my strong point.
So, you get in the Navy. When you show up to Buds, what was your thoughts when you showed up to Buds?
Well, I think by that time I felt pretty comfortable with how we were, or how Buds went, and a lot of that was because my best friend, again, we both wanted to go in the teams together, but he was a year ahead of me, so he actually joined the Navy 1 year ahead, and so he was kind of communicating with me how things were going, and when I was in A school, I actually was here in San Diego, so on the weekends I would take the bus over to Coronado, meet him and hang out with him and kind of get some insight. But before that,
did he make it?
He did.
Oh,
yeah,
dang.
yeah.
What team did he go to?
He went to STVs.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was he did one tour there, and then he got out, went into the police force, and still has a great career doing that.
So you had a good heads up as to what you were going to be facing when you got to Buds.
I did, and that year while he was gone, I was just so focused on what I needed to do, and I think one of the issues that I had, again, I was a good runner, a decent swimmer, but I'd never lifted weights before, and I didn't even know where to start, or definitely I would have hurt myself. So I went to the YMCA, and I met a former Kentucky football star, Cisco Bryant, Coach Bryant, and just went in and said, look, and again, 135 pounds, 16 years old. I said, I want to be a SEAL. And he's like, uh-huh. And I said, here's my strong points, but I don't have any weight training or anything. And he mentored me for that year. I would go, every day that I could. And he worked with me. And if anything, he kept me from getting hurt, which I think a lot of kids trying to go today, they just push it too hard and get hurt before they even go. But he was a good mentor to me, and got me kind of that more comfortable with my body, my weight, and to be able to handle that. So I felt pretty good going to Buds. And
you were good on pull-ups, push-ups, dips, and rope climbs and all that.
Yeah. He's the one who kind of worked with me on that and put me on a good program to be able to at least, again, make the markers. And back then, not a lot of people knew about Buds, so really all you had to do was meet the minimum. You weren't trying to outperform at that time. And I remember doing one of the tests. I think it was the test right before you class up. They were like, all right, 8 pull-ups, and they're trying to get everybody through. Once you did your 8th, they're like, all right, hop down, next. And they were just trying to.
They just didn't even care.
Yeah, it was just trying to. Yeah, if you were ready to class up and you met the test, then you were ready to go. You weren't really competing.
I got a confession to make. You just made me think of this, and I feel like a dick. So there was a guy. Remember, we had to do that class up test, and you count your buddy's reps. And my buddy, who I know exactly who it is because he ended up making it, on sit-ups, he was shy, the number. I didn't know him at the time. And, I think you had to do 75 sit-ups or something like this, and he did like 68. Maybe he even did like 72.
Well, like for time or something?
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to do, it's run, swim, or it's actually swim, run, pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups, something like that.
Gotcha.
Minimum numbers, like you said, Chris said the minimum for pull-ups was like 8.
Yeah.
But that was it. You do 8, okay, you're good. You're going in the class. This guy who I know him. like later on I know him, he's a great guy, he's a good guy, he's a great team guy, blah blah blah. He did like 70 shy of the sit-ups, and the instructor came over and was like, what was his number? And I'm like, 71, fail. Dude, I'm such an asshole.
Buddy.
I feel bad, dude. You know, but at the time, and also at that time, it was like, you didn't know who was making it. No. You didn't, and I don't think we had really had that attitude, because I think you get into an attitude of the class like you got to help your friends out, like help your buddy. And we weren't there yet, because we were just, hey, are we going to class up? And so I also have like a cold-blooded streak of honesty, and it's hard for me to lie about shit. And I actually had one person tell me one time, you're incapable of lying. I'm like, probably pretty close. So the instructor asked me, I'm like, 71. They're like, fail. Cool. Sorry, bro. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of when I first got to Bud. So I think when I got there, the class before is just classed up. So everyone that was waiting in that fourth phase or whatever, that pre-training phase, they had all left for the class. So there was a handful of people that were kind of hanging around, and there were a couple of people that you kind of felt that stayed in that limbo, that purgatory for way too long. And whether they're like, oh, I'm not ready to class up, so maybe they wouldn't do as many of the pull-ups just because you had orders there. It cost way too much to send you someplace else. So if you kind of you could stay in fourth phase for months, and, maybe even a year, but too long. Yeah. But your clock doesn't start until you class up. So there's really no reason to stay in fourth phase, and because you're just never going to go anywhere. So, but I show up, and there's not a whole lot of people there, and I get a room and meet my roommate, who ended up being my swim buddy, great guy, and it was like a Friday. It was the first day I had just gotten all my uniforms, and they would have a schedule. So you're around the actual classes, but they would meet at morning for PT, and they would do something. But then they'd say, okay, come back on the beach, and we're just going to do surf passage, and just practice going in and out of the water. There's no time. There's no limit. Nobody's watching you. It's just you just go out and do it. Or we're going to do a run or go to the pool or something. So this day they were doing surf passage, and this was, I guess it was March. So the waves were pretty good there, and so being from Kentucky, didn't grow up around the ocean. I wasn't a surfer or anything. I got my ass hammered. We had those duck feet that weighed a ton, and I put them on and get out in the waves. I get knocked down. I get up. I'm trying to swim out, and I'm trying to swim over the waves, and I'm just getting pushed right back into the beach. And this happened, it was the whole time, so the 2 hours or whatever you're doing it. And I get back to the room that night, and I'm like, how can I be a SEAL if I can't even get through the surf zone? This is ridiculous. So I talked to my roommate, I think he was from California or from a coastal state. He's like, dude, don't worry about it. We'll go out this weekend. I'll teach you. And he did. He took me out and taught me how to dive under the water and kick like hell and just get through. And that was kind of my first experience of this is what a team does. When somebody has an issue, a buddy who has a little bit of knowledge says, hey, I can help you out. And,
it's a good thing you didn't get the introduction of the teams from me, short stroking your sit-ups like I did to that dude. Yeah. Oh, man. So you and I, what are you, 6 feet?
5'11".
Yeah, so I'm 5'11" too. Because I remember we got linked up together pretty quick because we're literally the same height. And that means even in, I don't know if did we mess with boats and stuff in fourth phase? I don't think we did.
If anything, it was just kind of an introductory thing. Like here's how you put it on your head. Here's how we lift it up. But it was just kind of PT type stuff, physical, just general training.
And then we roll into first phase. What'd you think of that?
I was kind of a small guy, but I didn't require a lot of maintenance, which was nice.
Yeah, you were low maintenance, bro.
Because the big guys, I remember being on the O course. This was right at the beginning. I don't know if you remember this, but we had a big guy.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And he was awesome. I mean, and he was a good guy.
Everyone loved him.
everyone loved him. He was a good runner. He was an awesome swimmer. I think he was a collegiate swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
And but he was, what you would think a SEAL looked like. And we were on the O course, and we were all lined up, and everyone just kind of goes, and it wasn't like a time thing. You just did the loop a couple of times just to practice, your techniques. And I remember this guy got to like the third obstacle, which was the high wall.
The high wall. So it's a wall that's probably 12 feet tall, and there's a rope on it, and you climb the rope like Batman. You hold the rope and you put your feet on the wall. You kind of walk up the wall, and then you get to the top. You flip to the other side and you drop down. Dude, I remember that. This is one of the few things I remember from Buds is this evolution right here. And watching that guy, his forearms gave out.
His forearms got out because he couldn't pull himself up the rope, and guys were kind of passing him through, and he spent the whole evolution on that wall. And the students that were done were over there cheering him on. The instructors were cheering him on, and they were like, "Get over the wall, get over the wall." And but he never made it over the wall, and they dropped him, performance drop. So
that was a performance drop.
I think so. But now that
it might be what you remember. It might have been I don't know if it was a DOR or if it was a performance drop.
I don't either. But again, it was kind of another realization of you don't know who's going to make it through.
Do you remember how many people we classed up with?
So the number that I remember, and I don't have any real evidence of this, it was about 116 or somewhere a little over 100.
Really?
That's what I remember.
I remember more than that.
Really?
But, yeah,
could be.
Who knows? I don't remember much.
Well, I remember losing a guy on the first PT of the first day, and we were on the grinder. They were hosing us down, and we got wet a couple of times, and he turned his ankle, or at least indicated
Allegedly.
he did. And they're like, of course, yelling at. I mean, it's the first day of Buds, and they were yelling at him, and he, went over and quit. But I remember losing, and then we lost people for performance. I think it was safety. A couple of weeks before graduation when we were on the island. But you mentioned at the opening about the boat crew leader, and I remember that like it was yesterday. We're getting ready to do
night rock portage.
Rock portage, yeah. And they bring everybody into the classroom to give us the brief, and it was looking bad out there. So this was probably April, May. The winds were high, the waves were going up, and we were just kind of sitting in there. You can hear the wind howling outside. And one of the instructors comes in. He's like, "Oh man, this is gonna be ugly." And this was before they had guys wear helmets, right? Because it's easier now. But they're like, make sure you're wearing your hat, so if your head smashes against a rock, it'll keep your brains in, and it'll soak up the blood. And they're just going on. So they come in, give the brief, and it's looking bad out there.
Bloodbath.
Yeah, they're just talking it up. They're like, "All right, get to your boats." So we all run outside, and we had people quit. Just bang, bang, bang. And I remember, this is the way I remember it. Our boat crew leader comes up. He goes, "Who's the next in charge?" And it was one of the other guys. And he hands him his paddle, and he goes, "I'm falling by the wayside."
Yep, that's the exact quote, bro. That's the exact quote. That's the exact quote that dude said.
And I remember you guys were good friends.
I think I was his roommate. I'm almost positive I was his roommate.
And we were all at first like, "Come on, man, stay in there, stay in there."
At first, I go, what? I didn't understand what he was doing. Like, I'm falling by the wayside. What does this mean? Like, are you picking up a different position on the boat? Are you gonna paddle from over here? I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. And so I think I literally said, like, "What the fuck are you talking? What are you talking about? What are you trying to say?"
Yeah. And we were all kind of like, and then Jocko turns and like, "All right, see you later," and just walked off. And we're all looking at it like, "See you later." And we just walked off, and the evolution wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad, man. It wasn't that bad.
He got sucked in.
He freaking rang out. We also had another guy that was a stud. That was like, all the instructors loved him. He was kind of a jacked guy. He was from the Northeast, and I remember he quit, and it was like, dang. I mean, he was a stud. He was doing great at everything. It's just a stud. And you're just thinking, what is wrong with these people? Which is a really accusatory thing. It's not for everybody. The program's not for everybody. I understand that. It is here's the strange thing. You research about this thing, this job. You enlist in the Navy for 6 years of your life. You sign the dotted line for 6 years of your life. You train, you wake up early, you swim, you do all these things, and then first night of Hell Week, you just go, I was wrong, hey, I'm out. Like, that's a lot of investment for zero return on that investment.
Yeah.
Hell Week. Do you remember, did you have any hallucinations?
Yeah, when on the long paddles, the just kind of seeing stuff in the water, some lights and stuff, but nothing as bad as some others.
Yeah.
Some others.
I saw a couple traffic lights out in the middle of the ocean, and I knew I was hallucinating. I was thinking, oh, there's a traffic light, but that's obviously not right because we're in the middle of the ocean. One of the clearest memories I have is one of the guys in our boat crew whose nickname ended up being Chet in the teams.
Who was my swim buddy.
He was your swim buddy. He swore. He was swearing, saying swear words for like a half an hour.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, dude, this dude is coming up with some creative words right now. He was just swearing for like a half an hour. He was so mad about everything. And he was just dropping F-bombs, man. It was freaking hilarious. Hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he was, and such a great guy. Again, I mean, he helped me in so many ways. Another thing was, I was a good swimmer, but swimming in the open ocean was not my thing. You know, farm boy from Kentucky. So, but he was good at guiding, and he helped me a lot of times because when I was guiding, I was all over the place. And there were a couple of times where, you know, the instructors were counting down, 30, 29, and we're just, doing everything we can to make the time. And again, it was largely due to just my inability to swim straight. But we never failed anything. But yeah, there was a couple of times that were close.
Yeah, I failed to swim. My swim buddy, who obviously I'm not going to say his name, so we failed to swim. And it was a swim that a bunch of pairs failed. So we all lined up.
Now, was this like a timed?
Yep, it was a timed swim sometime in first phase.
It wasn't like conditioning where they're like, all right, all you fail.
No, but a lot of us failed.
Yeah.
Like there was probably a current or something, whatever. So we fail, and this particular, who is in our boat crew, by the way, and you'll know who it is, but so we're standing in swim pairs, and they're calling us into the first phase office to explain why we failed. And this guy, we walk in, and the instructors are like, why'd you guys fail? And no shit, my swim buddy goes, Willink can't guide. And the funny thing was, I was actually good at guiding, and I wasn't a horrible swimmer. And I just couldn't, I was in a state of shock, and I was like, I guess not. And what we ended up doing as a class is we split up between, they gave us two good swimmers. So they're like, okay, Willink, you suck. And they put me with another guy, and they put the other guy with another guy. Well, I passed the next swim. He failed the next swim because he was slow. Yeah. But he blamed it on good old Willink over here. That's like the first memory I have of somebody just not taking ownership and how totally jacked up it was. And I was thinking, even the instructors, I could see the instructors. They didn't look like, oh, well, what's wrong with you, Willink? They looked at him like, oh, you're a dirtbag. I could feel that from them. So, oddly enough, did you have? Was there anything that was hard for you in Buds?
I wouldn't say like hard, but again, I didn't win anything. No, I didn't lose anything. I was right in the middle. If there was anything that came easier to me, it was just the running. Just because I just spent so many years running, I had the body for it. Yeah. That wasn't an issue. I didn't really I got cold as everyone did. But yeah, for dive phase, no issues. But I was comfortable in the water. I was already a scuba diver.
Did you pass pool comp first time?
Yeah.
Dang. I failed pool comp.
I do remember when we had life saving. and I was a trained lifeguard, so I felt pretty comfortable at that. And I got one of the instructors who was of shorter stature, and I was like, okay, well, I should be able to handle this. I don't know if he had a weight belt on or just whatever, but man, he whooped my ass in the pool. And it was, I think it was right before they started grading us, and it really kind of shook my confidence a little bit. And but I ended up doing okay. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you get that. You just get the bad draw, and especially on pool comp, if you got somebody who's kind of watching for, it's like, did you do 71 sit-ups or 75?
Yeah, I failed pool comp, and I didn't even go past the first thing where they rip your mask off. He ripped my mask off, and he started going up, getting a breath, coming back down, knocking my regulator out. Go up, get a breath, come back down, knock my regulator. So I didn't get a breath, and I was down there for 17 minutes. And I just sat there, like, kept putting it back in, kept doing the procedures. And then after 17 minutes, I sat there on my knees for 17 minutes, and all he did was knock my regulator out, come back down, knock my regulator out, come back down, and I kept putting it back in. I'd get like half a breath, boom, it was gone again. So, and then after 17 minutes, he came back down, gave me the signal to come up, and I come up, and I wasn't even stressed. I was like, so I come up, and he goes, you failed, you didn't look comfortable on there. And I was like, hoo-yah, instructor. And anyways, I ended up becoming friends with him later in the teams, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember this guy, I was just fucking with you. And I was like, oh great, my life. So yeah, you get messed with sometimes. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I never was a BUD/S instructor. I don't know if that's part of the program or something, see how you handle failure. I don't know, but it's kind of a weird dynamic, and but that school is, the way it's run is phenomenal. I mean, it's a science, and they do good work.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing because you would not think that 80% of the people that show up to that have enlisted in the military, that have gone through screening tests, that have trained, that have told their friends and family, I'm going to be a SEAL. You wouldn't think that 80% of those people in that category would quit. You wouldn't think it. And they do.
Yeah.
It's some crazy times. Crazy times. All right, so we get done. San Clemente Island. How many guys did we lose at San Clemente Island?
Not too many, but there were a couple of guys, one in particular that was in our boat crew.
Oh, yeah.
That got a safety violation.
Yes, and that's the very guy that called me out as being the failure. So I think he was getting tracked the whole time.
I do too.
I think he was getting tracked because I think they just thought, this guy's not a team player, and we don't want him in the teams.
It's interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the very same guy.
It makes sense.
We also lost an officer out there.
Yeah.
And he was a really good guy.
He was, were we in the same boat crew on the island? Because they moved people around. I'm not sure if we were.
I don't think so.
But yeah, he was my officer, my platoon or element.
He wasn't mine, so we were different. I had a different one.
He was mine, and I remember before we went to the island, our kind of platoon all met at a pizza place together, and he talked about what was coming up, and we even had our spouses there and stuff. I mean, it was something like you would do in the teams. And we get out there, and they got him on something. It was so stupid.
It was a weapons test.
Yeah,
not a
like
shooting.
An academic.
Like
it was
an
like
academic weapons test. There was something going on there. He made somebody mad or something like that.
I think, because I believe I talked to him like soon after that, and he kind of indicated that there was some past on the officer side. I'm not sure if he was from the academy or not, but
he wasn't.
Yeah,
he wasn't from the academy.
Yeah, there was something there that didn't work out, and it was unfortunate because I mean, what little time we were with him, I think he would have made an awesome officer.
That's the hard part about having a certain level of subjectivity in the training, which there is less of it now.
Is there?
Yeah, there's less of that subjectivity. When we went through, it was it was very subjective. And in many cases, that was the right thing. Because a team guy, instructor's looking at a guy saying, I don't really want this guy in a platoon with me, which is the ultimate test. Now, there's a great trick that one of the Master Chiefs played on the instructors at one point. One of the Master Chiefs who you know, but he was running buds. And he brought all the instructors into a room and said, hey, all right, who thinks, we should make this, make sure it's as hard as it can be and set the standards. And everyone's like, yeah. And so I said, okay, well, what about the run times? What should we make it? And guys are chipping down the run times, chipping down the swim times, chipping down all these things. And then they get done with this new model of buds. And then he pulls out a stack of records, and it's all the instructors' records. And he says, awesome. None of you would be in the teams. And he was right. You can only be so hard. So the subjectivity, I think it's less now. I believe it's less now. But it had a benefit and it had some negatives. Because the benefit is if a guy really didn't belong, because look, you can be a tough guy. You can just be a knuckle dragger like, I'm not going to quit. That does happen. Guys just not going to quit. They're just tough, but they don't belong in the teams, and they would get rid of that guy. Mm-hmm. But occasionally you get a guy like that officer who was a good guy, but I mean, we spent a lot of time with him, and he was a good guy, and for whatever reason, rubbed somebody the wrong way, and that was that. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Freaking rough.
I hope he went on to do great things. I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did. So you and I both get orders to SEAL Team 1. Did you request West Coast?
No. So
really?
So that you fill out your dream sheet, which I think is pretty worthless.
But it was for you. It was my dream all day long. I was like, Team 1, baby. It was literally my first choice.
Well, I'd be interested to see how they did the division. But so my best friend, who again I grew up with, both always planned to be in the teams.
Did you put in for SDV?
I did. I wanted to go to the East
Coast.
Coast.
You're the only person that put in for SDV.
So on that, I put, you had 3 choices. My first choice, I think I put like SEAL Team 8 or SEAL Team, it was an East Coast team. But my third choice, I will go to SDVs on the East Coast just because that's where I wanted to go. And I get SEAL Team 1.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure it was just needs of the Navy, as I've learned throughout my career, is that will come first, and I'm sure they had numbers that they needed, and I don't know how things got divided because we had almost half our class go to the East Coast.
Yeah, it was kind of half and half our class. It was kind of half and half. It almost was like half of us went to the East Coast, half of us went to the West Coast.
We had guys go to SDVs.
Were you married yet?
I was. I got married right before Buds. So I went home after A school on that leave, got married, and then went to Buds. And then my wife finished college, and then she moved out to San Diego after she finished.
What did she think about coming to San Diego?
In the beginning, it was she didn't want to leave the East Coast because all of our family was there, and so she's like, all right, I'll go to California, but don't ever ask me to go out of the country. And of course, 15 years later, we get orders to Germany, and she would have left without me because she wanted to go so bad. So she had a total turnaround. And we joke about this all the time because we're still married. We'll have 31 years next month.
Impressive.
But yeah, it was. She came out to San Diego, and being married in Buds was kind of interesting because a lot of people think, and I did, before I found out that Buds is kind of like boot camp where you're there all the time, but it's not. You have a schedule, you show up for the schedule. When you're done for the day, you're done. And weekends, you're done. So we lived out in town. And
where'd you guys live?
Down in IB.
Dang.
And I had a crappy apartment. She had a college friend that came out with her, so to help with the rent. And but our room was all guys who lived off base, so it stayed very clean because we weren't living in it. The beds were always made, floors were always swept. We might come in, and actually Ty Woods was one of my roommates from Benghazi, who later died in Benghazi. And but yeah, because he had lived off base, so all the guys that had places off base got a room together, and so we didn't have to clean it as much.
So you clean. I didn't leave our base. I don't think I left base. And like, even to this day, if I can stay at my house, I'll stay at my house. I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
There's nowhere I want to go. There's no one that's like, hey, you want to go to a restaurant? Echo's like, hey, I'm having the fights at my house tonight. I'm like, cool. Enjoy watching them. I'll be watching them too. I'm watching them by myself at my house. I was like, okay, this is my barracks. I was in 602, whatever the barracks, 602. I'm in barracks. Cool. I stayed there. That's all I did was stay there. I don't think I left base in first phase. I don't think maybe did I go to Subway or something possibly, but no, I was just in there like sharpening my knife. Didn't have a car, didn't have a bike. Yeah. What are we going to do? I'm going to sharpen my knife, going to polish my boots, going to clean my room, going to hang out with my other loser roommates that are also young and just not doing anything, and we're just going to sit around and have fun. But yeah, that idea of that people don't understand is that, buds, if you want to, when training's over, you can go get drunk if you want to.
Yep.
It's almost a test in its own right of what you're going to do and how you're going to behave, and you'll get rolled up eventually, or that'll be that. So you end up getting orders to SEAL Team 1. Mm-hmm. Did you protest them, or you just like, oh,
no.
Hey, roger that.
That's where they want me to go. And I mean, again, it wasn't like I was the only guy. Mm-hmm. I was with 15, 16 of my best friends. So it's like, all right, well, we're going here. And
we all kind of went to Team 1, right? Did people go to other teams?
Yeah, so
other West Coast teams.
A couple of guys went to 5. Like my swim buddy,
right. Yep,
he went to 5. A couple of guys went to STVs. I'm not sure what coast they were on, but yeah, we had. But they were kind of an anomaly. There was a big grouping.
A crew of us went to 1.
Yeah,
a crew of us went to 1. That was what happened.
Yeah.
When we showed up, we didn't even. You and I went to comm school before we even went through SQT, right?
Yeah, so when we showed up at that time, the training department, which was at the team, they had, of course, they had to train the platoons that were getting ready to go overseas. So they only did SQT, SEAL qualification training, at certain times of the year. And you had to wait till you got people, because remember, we had people from other classes that came after us that went through that training together. So during that time, we all went to departments to work. Mm-hmm. And before I joined the Navy, I met the only time I ever met a prior SEAL that gave me any decent information. It was in Kentucky. I don't remember how I got connected to him. I think it was through my parents, because he did something with trucking. And he met me for breakfast one morning. So I'm 17, I think, at this time, and I'm just asking him any question that I had. And he just, he was very direct, frank with me. He was, dispelled a lot of the myths, like killing the puppy and the
literally drowned you.
Yeah, all the stupid stuff. And he gave me like a couple of pieces of advice. First thing was for Hell Week, how to get through Hell Week. This was his thought, was that what gets guys the most is they plan, or they think too far ahead. Mm-hmm. They're not focused on the now. And so you're getting ready to do a run, or getting ready to do rock portage, and you're thinking of what's going to happen next week, and on the swim that I'm not very good at, and that gets into this loop, and you just end up quitting. He said, don't do that. Just think about what are you doing right now? You got to run. What do you have to do to prepare? Get your boots, get your gear, and do the run. What's next? A swim. Okay, what do I need? I need my knife. I need my this. So just stay on the now. And then when that gets too tough, then just take it. I'm going to get to this next hour, and I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing. Get through whatever it is right now, get over this obstacle, and then I can move to the next one. And that's what I did that during Hell Week. It's like, what am I doing right now? And Hell Week is great for that, because you don't have to plan. All you have to do is show up with the right gear and do what they tell you to do.
For me, Hell Week was a relief, because I wasn't worried about failing anything, because I was like, hey, I'm not quitting. And I had failed to swim, like I said, because we had issues, and I had failed one run, because I tried to pace myself. And I'm not a fast runner. So I was like, I've passed whatever it was, 3 runs at this point. So I'm going to pace myself on this one. And I failed. I barely failed, but I failed. So I was always sweating, failing stuff. And so when Hell Week was coming, I was like, cool, I can't fail anything. Bring it. And I had fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I had fun because I knew that I wasn't going to quit, and I was just having a good time.
So the second piece of advice that it gave me came when you get to the team, you need to find the job that nobody wants, do it well, and you'll always have work. So when we showed up at SEAL Team 1, and we're all kind of going into the departments, I was like, I want to go into the comms department, and because nobody else wanted it, because carrying the radio was heavy, and people had this kind of idea that comms was just this mysterious magic thing. When it worked, it was PFM, pure fucking magic. When it didn't, well, the gods weren't aligned. The moon wasn't aligned that day, and I knew that not to be true. And if I could, do that job well, then I knew I would always have a job. And back then, if you weren't in a platoon, they had you in a department. Mm-hmm. And, today it's, everybody's a shooter, so you just keep rotating out. But back then there was no guarantee of that. And if they had too many people at the team, then if they didn't need you, then you just sat in a department until something else came. So I wanted to go into comms. And when we got to the team, there was two billets that opened up at the East Coast comm school. And the way I remember it, at that time, there was this, kind of my belief was there was this real East Coast, West Coast rivalry thing. Mm-hmm. And none of the older guys at the team wanted to go to the school because that's the East Coast. I don't want to go to the East Coast. We do it better here. And I think people in the training were like, you can't teach me anything. And we were new guys, didn't even have our trident yet, or even through SQT. So we're like, we'll go. and sure enough, they're like, okay,
cool.
And and they sent us to comm school.
I had stood quarterdeck watch with a post platoon commander lieutenant who this is back when we used to sleep on the quarterdeck, in that little bunk room. So we're hanging out, whatever. We got pizza for dinner. And I mean, this is literally within being at the team for probably a week. And he says, and I'm like, freaking, I'm ready to rock and roll. I think we're going to Nam, the whole 9 yards. And, he says, well, what are your hopes? And he's a very cerebral guy. Anyways, very nice guy. He's like, what are you looking to do? I'm like, I want to go on ops. I want to go out there. And he goes, hey, if you really want to go on operations, you need to become a comms guy, because no one wants to do it. And yet every operation there 100% has to be a comms guy there. You don't necessarily need a sniper. You don't necessarily need a point man. You don't necessarily need a machine gunner.
A rigger.
You don't necessarily need a rigger. You need a comms guy. And so if you want to go on every operation, you go be a comms guy. That morning I woke up, really turned over the watch, and went right to the comms department and said, I want to be a radio man. So there you go. That's how I ended up. And I remember there was pushback from the guy at the East Coast that said, what are you doing? Send me 2 new guys. This is an advanced course of instruction. You can't send new guys. They're going to get slaughtered out here.
Yep.
And we just said, bring it. So we show up. That was a freaking great course of instruction.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And that was, again, the start of our career. And to have that skill and again, when we got back from the course, I'm sure that we had some bit of arrogance about us. I know that might surprise you about Jocko, but I mean, we understood it. We had the skill down, and there was nobody could touch us. And you'll probably remember the guy who taught comms in training cell at the time. he was not a fan.
He hated me. Dude.
He hated you.
He hated me. You were quiet enough to be quiet. Like go under the radar. I was like, that's actually wrong. You did. 19-year-old Jocko was a handful, son.
Because when we were in SQT and he was doing his comms class, he was just all over the place. And I remember specifically it was the Zulu time. Do you remember that?
What?
He was trying to explain in developing a comms plan that all times are in Zulu and why it's in Zulu. But his terminology wasn't quite correct. And he was saying that Zulu time is so many hours back or something. And you were like, no, Zulu time is Zulu time. And you could see
I'm a new guy, bro.
Yeah, and you could see it in his face. He's getting kind of red. He's like, no. What it means, because it was something that had to do with daylight savings time. It changed. And it's like, it's this off of Zulu. And you're like, no, Zulu time is Zulu time.
I used to run my life on Zulu time. So when we went to that course, this is the cool thing. So we show up at this course. We're not SEALs. We're new guys. We don't have our tridents yet. We jump in with a bunch of experienced East Coast guys. And actually there was a couple guys from Team 5 out there that had a platoon or two under their belts. And we just, same thing. They're living in town, whatever. We're living in the barracks.
Yep.
Where all we're doing is studying. We have to learn Morse code. You and I are like talking to each other in Morse code, like freaking C-3PO and R2-D2, right? Studying this stuff. We're totally into it. We have people think you graduate from SEAL training, you have some kind of tactics for the field. We didn't have any of that. We didn't know what we were doing.
Or equipment.
Or equipment. Yeah, that's right. We didn't have anything. So the chief, at first he was pissed that we got sent out there. You're sending me these two knucklehead new guys. But then he realized we were freaking fired up and we wanted to be like, there's not too many SEALs that are like, hey, I want to be a radio man. That's what we literally wanted to do. So once he realized that, he was kind of like, okay, but then he would kind of test us. And one of the tests he did, so that course, the end of the course was a 6 or 7 day in the field FTX. And it was around a swamp. It was around an airfield that's a swamp. You're in the middle of a swamp. So this chief that was running the course, he goes, Willink. And he says, hey, if you're hardcore, you'll go in the field with nothing but a poncho and a poncho liner. And I was like, what? Did you say if I'm hardcore? Is that what you just said? Because trust me, I'm Jocko and I'm freaking hardcore. So you're saying a poncho and a poncho liner? That's what, okay, cool. Yes, I'm hardcore. I'm going to the field with a poncho and a poncho liner. What? By the way, key component here, poncho liner, no ground pad, which is insane.
Yeah.
Did you have a ground pad?
No.
So you and I are idiots. We have no ground pad. We have no sleeping bag. We have no bivy sack. We go with a poncho and a poncho liner.
And we were wearing wool. Not the smart wool you get today, but like World War II wool.
Yeah,
kind of
WWII wool.
I think we even went to one of those G.I. Joe stores or whatever and was buying old wool to wear.
So we go in the field. When we're driving to the field, and now, so it's January in Virginia. February, maybe?
Probably, yeah, January,
February. We're driving to the field. On our drive, it starts raining. As we start pulling into the area of operations, it turns to sleet. As we're getting out of the vehicles, it turns to snow.
Yep.
It's freezing.
And I remember as we got out of the vehicle and we start, our patrol into our first point, we get to this little creek or, where it actually has water in it. And Jocko and I look at each other and Jocko goes to me, it only sucks the first time. Because, you get wet. Once you're wet.
You only get wet once.
Yeah, you only get wet once. And so we just drove right through it. And, it only sucked the first time.
That first time lasted 7 days. It sucked once for 7 straight days. So we end up, on that course, we had communications windows that we had to make with stations around the country. So we're setting up these old school antennas. Echo Charles, this is where you literally take out pieces of wire and you measure the wire to the frequency that you're going to be communicating on, and you hang these pieces of wire clandestinely in trees. And then you make these communications window. And we had like a communications window every 2 to 4 hours the entire time. And what happens is, if you're getting graded the whole time, and he comes out and checks your, if you've got like what they call, if you're out camping. So if you've got stuff strewn about and you got your sleeping bag out and everything's out of your rucksack, then he's going to dock you points, or he's going to send you on E&E or something like this. And if you miss communications windows, then that's points against you. And how strong your comms is, that can be points against you or points for you. So what happens with all the other groups, literally every single other group, they missed some of their comm windows because it's every 2 to 4 hours. And why did they miss their comm windows? Because they would fall asleep. Why would they fall asleep? They fell asleep because they got in a ground pad, got into a bivy sack in a freaking negative 0 degree sleeping bag, and they just would fall asleep. We literally could not sleep. We could not sleep. We would just stand. I remember just sitting there looking at you. We're marching in place by a tree. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. We have every piece of clothing that we have on. We've got a poncho over us, and we're marching in place trying to stay warm because we're going to freeze to death, bro. We're soaking wet. It was freaking ridiculous. No ground pad. We don't miss any comm windows. We set up great antennas because we had all this time to set them up because we weren't sleeping. And we make all of our comm windows. We make good communications on all those comm windows. And we end up as the #1 pair. And the #1 pair gets the early extract, meaning when everyone had to stay like the full day or the extra night or whatever, we get pulled out of the field early as the #1 pair. 2 freaking meatball new guys. We get pulled out of the field early. And here's an awesome thing. And I don't know if you know this, but that chief called the master chief. Yeah, he called the master chief of our command and said, "Hey, you sent these 2 knuckleheads out there. They just graduated the #1 pair in the class. They're freaking squared away. You should take care of these 2 guys. They're great SEALs." Which was, we weren't even SEALs yet. Yeah. So it was really cool. Obviously, I let it go to my head like, hey, no one can tell me anything about comms. I'm the freaking ultimate comms guy.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, it wasn't like we were at just the right place at the right time and we made a good decision. That was it. I mean, we knew our shit. Yeah. And there was no one else at that team, at least, that could counter that. Yeah. So, I think we were, somewhat arrogant. But again, that's what we set out to do. We wanted the hardest job. We were going to do it well. And we never had a problem finding work.
Yeah, that was good times. So then we go into SQT.
Yep.
So we go into SQT when we get back, which we had just been through freaking Hell Week. I think it might have been harder than Hell Week.
Well, I came out worse.
Oh, that's right. You had significant trench foot, right?
Yeah. To where for weeks I was down, and I remember like sitting at home having my feet in hot or warm Epsom salt, and just the pain of that feeling when it comes back to your nerves, and still today I have nerve damage from that. It's when I retired, you go through your medical screening, and I still have part of from that. Now I've gotten used to it because it's been so long, but
you had a legitimate case in 1991 or 1992 of World War I trench foot. Yeah, from spending 7 days in the freezing cold with our feet were wet the entire time. Yeah. That was another thing. He told us to wear jungle boots. He was like, you wear, because you wear all these Danners, Danners and these high speed boots. You go, they're going to get wet and they're never going to dry out. And I was like, Roger that. So what I wear? Jungle boots. What'd you wear? Jungle boots. And I actually carried that through my entire career. My entire career, I almost wore jungle boots 90% of the time. Unless, my rule was, if there's snow on the ground during insert, I'll wear something else. If there's not snow on the ground, I'm wearing jungle boots. And I did that my whole career. Because because jungle boots, they dry out Echo Charles. So there's little drainage holes. Mm-hmm. So they dry out, and it might take them a few hours. But if you're wearing a pair of thick insulated boots, they are not going to dry out. And so I wore jungle boots almost my whole career. And finally, they started making some modern boots that were comparable to jungle boots. Yeah. So now we go to SQT. which was awesome. We had great instructors in there, great instructors teaching us the fundamentals. We were we got. It was almost like our generation of instructors. Those guys were like 1 degree of separation from Vietnam for the vast majority of our instructors.
It was. I also think it was important that the training was still at the team at the time. So, these were people that you were going to be in a platoon with. And, there was a lot, especially at SEAL Team 1, we have, kind of that history of having that ownership and, meeting a certain standard. And they really pushed that. And I think that came out in the training that we got during that time. But yeah, these were guys that had been in for and had multiple platoons. I mean, they just did it over and over. And they had quality training.
It seems kind of funny now when I look back on it, but there was this thing that they would say at Team 1, it's not just a number, it's an attitude. And in fact, our seniors oftentimes were kind of joking when they said that because, we also had the nickname was Stalag Team 1 because we had uniform inspections and haircut inspections and everything was like more militant. But I believed it. I mean, I was like, yeah, hey, it's not just a number, it's an attitude. Especially young Jocko, he was all about that. Like, we're number 1. That means something. There's a reason. Team 1.
Of course. So
I got a little crazy with that. But the instructors, freaking outstanding. And so much of what I learned then. And I fast forward a little bit, but I always say like 70% of what I learned in the teams, I learned while we were instructors at training cell at SEAL Team 1.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that. Yeah. So we go through that. We go through SQT. We had any big high points of SQT?
No, it was just, again, we were with all the guys from Buds
so many
and
guys
some
from
others,
our Buds class,
and just quality people. And no, it was a good time. The training was good, and back to the Stalag 1. I mean, and I consider, I'm sure you do too. I mean, we grew up at SEAL Team 1, and just what we learned there set for the rest of the career, set your work ethic, your the way you see things, and the community as a whole. And I'm proud to have been at Team 1, and from that period of time, it was phenomenal.
Yeah. I think I remember this time where you told me you were going on a trip, and I think you were going on some kind of a trip, and Team 5 was also going on a trip. And I remember you telling me you should have seen their pallets. Like, meaning their aircraft pallets. When you go on a big trip, you load your aircraft pallets with all your gear, and there's a science to it, and there's an art to it too, like making it all squared away, making it weighed right, making it look good, and making it look clean so the Air Force inspector will pass you. And I remember you saying, "Man, you should have seen the Team 5 pallets. You were disgusted."
Yeah, I mean, if it looks like trash, it probably flies like trash.
We get done with SQT, and we roll into our first platoons. We're in sister platoons now.
We had to be.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to stack the platoons with both of us. So and this was I think a great strategic decision. They always had us, you and I, in different platoons, but I mean, we talked every day. And I remember, if I did a comp plan or something that worked or didn't work, we would get together and debrief about it. And but yeah, they always kind of kept us separated.
Were you the primary comm guy in your first platoon?
No, there was a primary, but it was early on, like just get it done. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of leeway,
right?
But because he had other stuff to do, but it was pretty clear who was making the comm plans and who was keeping the gear, and then from then on, I was
I was super lucky I was the primary comm guy in my first platoon. Pretty awesome. A lot of responsibility for a freaking meatball new guy. And that's also where I realized, hey, if you don't want to be told what to do, do it ahead of anyone being able to tell you what to do. So that was my goal. Our platoons had some unique personalities.
Very, very unique.
Your platoon was pretty savage, dude.
It was, again, an interesting time, and it wasn't it wasn't like an even or like a bell curve. It was you were either a brand new guy or you had 4 or 5 platoons, and there was maybe one, but there was really no in between. And luckily, I think there was 5 or 6 of us.
New guys, you mean?
New guys, that there was at least 1 or 2 that had the spotlight on them. So it kept the spotlight off the off the others.
Yeah.
And I was in my low mode.
You were like, hey, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to do what I'm told.
I'm just going to make
comms. Because it was
comms.
a scary place in the 90s at Team 1 as a new guy. There was
much different.
There was scenarios that could unfold really quickly if you were out of line as a new guy. And your platoon definitely had some bruisers in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Some bruisers in it. Studs. Freaking legendary freaking 90s team guys just getting after it. My platoon was a little bit more mellow than that. So, I mean, great guys, but just a little bit of a different personality. The personality of my first platoon was a little bit different than the personality of your first platoon. We end up going on deployment together. We go to Guam. My platoon got in so much trouble on our first trip that we never left Guam again after my first trip.
Really?
Yep. We did one trip. We got to Guam, we did one trip, and we got in so much trouble that we never did a trip again. They pulled us off the schedule.
Wow.
Where you're not going there, you're not going there, you're not going to there.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. So that's why I was sitting in Guam for 5 months. And how many trips did you go on?
I think we did 3.
Yeah. So you probably did at least 1 or 2 of ours that we were supposed to do. We got rotated out. We were a disaster. The guys like to party, I must say. So got done with that. I mean, what was your first platoon? Any big leadership lessons learned?
No, again, at the time, I just did what I was told, and you were, even though technically, as being a comm guy, I was well aware of what I needed to do, but you're still kind of learning how the community works, and there's things in the field that you're still trying to develop, and you mentioned the guys, it was a unique dynamic, but they were still solid people, and they were good mentors, and they worked with you. If you were really, hey, I'm here to do this, then they were all about teaching you, and sometimes not the carrot but the stick, but they did get you to where by the next platoon you were ready to be a department head. You were ready to lead, and you knew tactically what you needed to do.
The underlying tone that I took away that I think was instilled in me the most at SEAL Team 1 was being professional, and that applied to like, hey, when you're in the field, you're a professional, and that's what you need to do. You're squared away. You don't have your crap lying all over the place. Your gear's squared away. You don't have straps hanging off of everything. That was the deal. Time to shoot, you shoot. You shoot the way you're supposed to shoot. You're not throwing rounds all over the place. When it's time to make comms, you make freaking comms. And I still have an eval that said made comms 100% of the time. 100% of the time. There's no voodoo for freaking me and Giff. We were making freaking comms.
That's it.
We were making freaking comms. That's what was happening.
Definitely.
Yeah, but that high level professionalism. Yeah, and when I was talking about your platoon had personalities, they definitely had awesome, crazy personalities, but for sure professional. And it's the same thing with the guys that were in my first platoon. They were a little bit more lighthearted, but they were professionals, and you didn't want to mess up. You wanted to do a good job. You wanted to learn as much as you could. You wanted to be known as a good operator. That's what you wanted to be known as. And so that's what you did. We'd always be, all of us, our whole new guy crew, Saturday morning, be at the team. We'd be working out. We'd be fixing gear. We'd be hanging out. I remember that until basically we went on that first deployment. That was what it was. I just remember always being at the team. Always being at the team. It's just the way it was. After that first platoon, then I started volunteering for ARG platoons on the ships, and you continued doing the what we called spec ops platoons,
Right.
which was going to Guam basically, and then going on exercises from there. How was that next platoon?
It was good, you know, because again, now you're past the new guy stage, and now people are looking to you to, you know, to start being a leader, and we had good new guys, great new guys, and now I'm the department head, so if there was any strains on me before, now those are all gone. You know, we had good officers, and it was good, but it was still back to Guam, and spec ops. You know, it was the '90s, so you know you did what they asked you to do. A lot of FID, but
the dry
foreign
years.
internal defense,
The dry years. Then you did another platoon. You got back from that?
Yep, did a third one, and again, now I'm starting to look at, okay, I'm ready to be LPO chief. I've got the comms thing down. I'm good with that. Now I need to start moving up. And the problem that we had at that time was the way the Navy worked is you had that source rating. So you competed against that source rating to promote. And my source rating was ICMan, Interior Communications Electrician. So my job in the Navy was supposed to be fixing phones and navigation equipment on ships, which I had no clue how to do. But because I was an electrician and I understood how I could look at a schematic when I took the test, because that's what you take the test on. I could look at the schematic and go, oh yeah, well this is a resistor. It's probably this, and Navy tests are all the same. There's two answers that are totally out. And then there's two that are pretty close, and you just got to choose the right one. So I was good at taking the test and promoting all the way up to E6. But after that, now you're competing. You're still competing to make chief, but we're all competing against in different ratings. And ICMan just was not advancing, because at the time, a lot of people that were doing that job would get out and go work for like AT&T or something. But now cellular networks were coming in, so nobody was getting out. So the only people that were advancing were people who had been in 17, 18 years, because you had to build up that time. But then all my friends who were in different ratings, like I think hull technician was one, they were making rank because everyone was getting out and working at the shipyards. But we were all doing the same job as a SEAL, but that's not what they were testing. Thankfully, that changed, and we have an SO rating, and that's better. But at the time, and that was really weighing on me on promotion, because I was ready to advance, but it was the Navy system that was keeping me from doing that. And so after the third platoon, and that was our first rotation date, and we knew that some people had to leave, and some people would stay, and I think the core was going to stay, but I needed to find another way to kind of break out, and at the time, because we were deploying down to Southeast Asia, I looked at, okay, how can I be more of an asset to the team? And in my third platoon, who we had our platoon chief, who made Master Chief, and who I'm talking about, because I think you did a platoon with him too. Awesome guy, but he was a Thai speaker, and we did a trip to Thailand, and I just remember he kind of commanded everything, even though he wasn't the guy in charge, but he spoke the language, and kind of going back to you want to be an asset. And to be a comm guy, you're always going to go because you have the radio. Well, if you're a linguist, that too. And this was the 90s. So at the time, I think it was Bill Clinton administration, they were starting to normalize relations with Vietnam. And we didn't have any Vietnamese speakers at the team. I think we had one. He was actually from Vietnam. But we had a ton of Thai speakers and a ton of others. So I was like, okay, here's an opportunity to, kind of get a skill. They're wanting people to rotate, so I want to go to language school for a year, and I want to stay on the West Coast, so I wanted to take an Asian language. I ended up taking Vietnamese, but that was an opportunity to be able to come back, and I eventually came back to one. But
so that was a 1-year school.
1 year, yeah. It was one of the worst years of my career for sure, and because the school in Defense Language Institute is a phenomenal school. I mean, there's no other like it. But that's all you do is study.
How many hours a day are you in class, and how many hours a day do you have to study?
So the class was a regular 8 hours. It's from 9 to whatever, and you take a break for lunch. But this was one thing I wasn't prepared for, and I probably should have studied harder in high school, should have taken a language. But I would get up first thing in the morning, early, like around 4:35, and I would study for an hour and a half before school. Then I would drive in, go to class, take an extra, because I think lunch was an hour. Yeah, it was like an hour for lunch. But they had a deal with, you could spend 30 minutes one-on-one with an instructor while they ate, so you just kind of discuss things. And then you eat for half an hour, then you start class again. Finish the day, I would drive straight home, study for another 2 hours, eat dinner, study for another hour, and go to bed.
And you did that for a year?
I did it for about 8 months. And it took about 8 months to feel comfortable enough where I could take, maybe I didn't study that extra hour after dinner or something, but I mean, we were learning 50, 60 vocabulary words each day. And this isn't a Romance language. Vietnamese is, it's,
completely and utterly foreign.
Yeah. And
it's is it tone language?
It's tonal. So they have,
I remember you telling me about this.
They have 6 tones. So how you say a word,
I think you told me about rice. Like rice means rice, white, eat, and some other things depending. It was something like that.
So the word I use is ma. That's when I tell people about tones. So you can say the word ma 6 different ways in Vietnamese. So it's ma, 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 ma. I might have missed one. Anyway, but each of those words means something different.
Totally different.
About how you say it. So one means a rice plant as it's coming up the water. Another means your cheek. Another way means your mother. Another way means a horse. Another way means a ghost or a crypt where you bury people. So if you say the phrase like de la ma, if I'm pointing to a horse, obviously I'm not talking about my mother. But if you say it wrong and someone's just listening, it has a total different meaning. But you can say de la ma, de la ma, de la ma, and it means something different each time. So yeah, it's just what took hours of just listening to cassette tapes. That's what we had at the time. And
some people are better at this naturally than others, correct?
I would hope so. I wasn't, because the amount of hours towards, if you compared with the grades I was getting, I was way overworking myself. But I learned. So I learned how to study was a big one. They actually had somebody who was getting their PhD on learning styles or something, and they came in and actually worked with us, where we took a survey. And then she met with us and says, okay, you're this type of learning style. And what it taught me is, like, I was wasting my time with flashcards, because that's what everyone was using flashcards.
Dude, this is my bread and butter is flashcards.
So what she told me is, you are better off just getting a blank notebook and just writing stuff down over and over, kind of like on the blackboard, when you get punished. Yeah. Because the way
I will not make fun of my comm school instructor. So I will not make fun of my comm school instructor.
So I would just listen to conversations and I would handwrite it down. I'd run it back, and that helped me kind of on the listening side, understand what I'm hearing and be able to work it. But it was the other bad thing about DLI, but challenging thing was the leadership. And I know you have a lot of different listeners. The Intel community, in my opinion, are not, they're not necessarily leaders. They're good at getting information, putting it in reports. I mean, that's their job. Leadership wasn't quite it. And the people that ran the Navy side of DLI were all intel people that were there for like their shore duty. And most of the students at DLI are all kids right out of high school because they, this is like their job.
Yep.
And they score high on a test and they bring them in and say, hey, you're gonna study Arabic, and they're like, okay. And they would do fine for a while, and if they failed, then they would kind of move them down to an easier language, and if they failed that, then it was to the fleet or whatever. And but the leadership at the school was challenging because they didn't want to do any of the leadership part of actually leading? Mentoring and leading. So guys like, because I made E6 while I was there. They kind of pushed it to us like, okay, you're the LPO of the Asian division, and I'm just struggling to study every day and learn my 60 vocabulary words so I can talk that day. And now I got to deal with this person over here who went out and got drunk last night and was underaged or crashed their car, or it was just silly little things. And I'm thinking, you're on shore duty, and that's something you should be doing. But it fell to us. Luckily, we had some good representation there, some officers and senior enlisted that were going through different languages, and they put a stop to a lot of that. And I'll tell you one story. One of the guys was later our training master chief.
Okay, yeah.
And he was there, and I show up. So I'm just showing up to DLI, coming from Team 1, and got my whites on. I think we were wearing whites at the time. My whole business, and I walk in, and the lieutenant that was running the school, they kind of, as you do your check-in, she's like, well, I know you're an E6, but we have, your class doesn't start for a couple of weeks, so we'll just have you work in the Master at Arms shack or whatever until your class starts. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go down there, and the person working in the shack was like an E4 who had never been in the real Navy, had been at the school the whole time, and was failing. So they put them in this office to be the Master at Arms or whatever. So I show up again, E6, or I was E5 at the time, and I walk in, and they're like, "Well, yeah, we're doing some painting of some of the offices. So paint cans are over there. Just grab a can and a brush, and you can work painting the office for the next couple of days." I'm like, okay. So I walk out, and I see the Master Chief. And again, he's like, "Oh, great, another team guy." And I talk to him, and I'm like, "Hey, what's the deal with they want me to paint an office for the next 2 weeks?" He goes, "No." Walks into the lieutenant's office, shuts the door, comes back out for like 5 minutes later and says, "You work for me for the next 2 weeks." So that ended that.
Good stuff. Now, when you came back to Team 1, now it's like 1997, 1996, 1997, something like that?
So, yeah.
And you go right into training cell. And that's where I've been now for a year or something like
so
this.
So kind of our core group all went to training. And so I was gone for a year, come back, and I'm kind of getting the layout of what's going on. Excuse me. And I see all you guys, and you're like, "Yeah, we're in training cell. We're running things." I'm like, all right. And I'm like, are there any platoons?
Straight Team 1 Mafia at this point, man. We had our hands in everything, bro.
And I'm looking at the platoons. I'm like, all my friends are in training cell, and then I think you and I talked, because at the time, I think you had maybe started the comms program.
Yeah, I kind of started. Yes, I had started, but I hadn't run like what the vision was.
Yes,
but
you had vision,
run, of course. I had a vision, boy.
So I think we talked about it. We're like, look, we could do something big here, and I'm like, all right, I'm all in. So yeah, I came back. I I think the leadership had just turned over in training, and we had good people in there. The guy from DLI was there, and so I already knew he was awesome. So I'm like, yep, let's do this.
So we end up teaching a bunch of different stuff, but one of the coolest things that we did was we launched a comm school for the communicators at SEAL Team 1. And it was a struggle. It was kind of hard to get I don't know if you remember this. The hardest thing about getting it actually approved was the amount of batteries it was going to take. The 5590 batteries that cost $64 each or something like this, and we're going to have to outfit 20 guys or whatever it was. And our initial answer was no. You can't have money for those batteries. Use the rechargeable batteries, which were the BA, what were they called? BA 55 something else. Yeah. And we were like, that's unrealistic. We'd never carry those, but they only last well. And we ended up fighting, and our commanding officer, like, we pitched it to the commanding officer. He's like, all right, approved. And we got whatever it was, $4,000 to buy enough batteries to run this exercise. And we set up a freaking crazy FTX out in the field. And man, we weighed the guys. I remember we started off by weighing the guys to see how much equipment they had. And they average was what in their gear and equipment? 120 pounds?
At least, yeah.
So the guys are rolling out on a 7-day 2-man reconnaissance. And we've got, how many teams do you think we had on that first one? 6 or 7?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was probably 6, because it was probably 2 guys per 6 platoons at Team 1. And so there you go. Yeah. Here we go, rock and roll. And we took those guys out, and it was a ball buster.
Yeah, to put it lightly.
So
I'm sure some of the guys probably had better terms for it.
Oh, dude, it was harsh. So we did it up in the Southern California mountains. We had a really great target to observe. It's a military target. There was military activity at the target.
And that was the key, because I think when we went through our course, all we had, I think we were counting cars on a road or watching something, and a lot of the training was, you're going to watch this missile site, and it was a piece of PVC pipe, and maybe somebody come out once a day and do. But we had an active target where stuff was going on all the time, and it was important because you knew, based on the reports, who was actually doing the work, because there was stuff to report. Yeah, it was good.
And we set up comm shots all over the country, and so then the highlight of this first course that we ran, though, was there was one 3-man pair. For whatever reason. That always happens to the teams. You end up in a 3-man pair for some reason. So there's one 3-man pair, and we're monitoring everything. We're not sleeping at all. No. We're just not sleeping for 7 days. We're just so freaking fired up to be running this thing. And that 3-man pair misses a comm window, and so we immediately roll out there. We're like freaking Starsky and Hutch. Like, we got a missed comm window on freaking Delta 4. Let's go. So we roll out there, and we get to their position. And bro, we just knew too much. And I remember we said, like, hey, why weren't you up on that comm window? And they said something along the lines of, like, well, we tried, but the other station wasn't up. And you and I looked at each other, like, because we were monitoring the station, the frequency they were supposed to be calling on. We were listening to it.
Yeah. And we were close enough.
Yeah. We would have heard it regardless.
Yeah.
Like, we 100% would have heard it. We didn't hear anything. So we roll out there, hey, why'd you guys miss that comm window? They go, well, we tried, lie, but the other group wasn't up. Lie, because we got comms with the other group. So I remember you and I looked at each other. We just, I don't know if you said, I said, we're like, let's separate them. Or we took a step, we're like, let's separate them. So we separate them, and we're like freaking, we're like freaking 2 Sherlock Holmes up in this piece right here. And so I remember I go, and I said, what kind of antennas did you guys set up? And he's like, oh, we had a long wire. And you're asking, we come back to what kind of, he says inverted dipole. Oh, this guy says long wire. They're liars. So we come back over and we're like, all right, you guys didn't tell us the truth. And there's got to be consequences to that. So we start making these guys walk, and like up hills, up the big hills with all their gear and equipment, and they start walking. And then when they would get to those points, we'd be like, call us when you get there. But we'd be waiting for them.
And they still had to make their comm windows
along the way. That's right. That's right. And the cool thing about this, they shouldn't have lied and everything, but they were good guys.
Yeah.
Especially that one character.
Yeah.
The one character's like, I'm sorry, man. We shouldn't have lied. It's my fault. We shouldn't have lied. And we're like, yeah, cool. But that's 4 minutes too late, bro. And he was a new guy at the time too.
Yeah.
So these guys were just hating life. They knew they'd screwed up. But I remember, so they'd get to a spot that we took, like on the top of a mountain, and we'd be waiting for them, and they'd get up there and be like, get out your map. And you just have a look in their eyes, because get out your map means we're going to assign you another spot. So we'd point to another top of another mountain. And they'd be like, Roger. So we did that to him a few times. Finally, we did one. And we opened up the back of the truck, put the tailgate down. And I remember going, hey, you know, go back. It was actually, go back to the mountaintop you just came from. And you could hear like a little bit of a, and I said, or you guys can just put your gear in the back of the truck and call it quits. And I remember that one character, good guy, he's like, no, sir, no. Or he didn't call me sir, but he's like, no, Jocko, it's all right. We're going. We'll start walking. Good to go.
Fill up your water.
Yeah. Fill up your water bottles. What'd you tell me that guy told you? That was like the hardest training he ever did.
Well, I talked to him a couple of years ago. Great guy. And he's like, yeah, man, that was still one of the hardest training. You should actually have him on your show. I think he's still in, but yeah, it was from his perspective. I'm sure he would think differently, but yeah, it was good.
Awesome stuff. Great training for those comm guys, really. And that was, you know, you and I were obsessed. We realized the importance of comms. We over-indexed the importance of comms. To you and me, it was like, hey, if you can't get comms, you can't get extracted, you can't get fire support, which is true.
Yeah.
It's true. But we were crazy about it. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And
passionate, maybe that's a better term.
Yeah. I'm sure some people might call it passion. Some people call it psychotic. But that's how it rolls. The truth hurts, but lies hurt more. That was the lesson learned there. So then you ended up putting for a commissioning program, right?
So this was about the time that you left. And I was, again, I've been E6 for several years now, and I was reading the tea leaves. You know, I would take the chief's exam on a job I didn't know how to do, and so I thought, okay, this isn't. If I got to wait another 5-6 years to be chief when all my friends are making chief, then I need to find another job or another career. And this is the time, because I was at about 10 years at that time.
So you're actually weighing getting out. You're thinking about getting out.
Yeah, I was
This is what, 99? So there's no wars going on.
Yeah,
you kind of done what you could do.
Yeah. There was, if in hindsight, if I knew we were going to go to war next year, I would have not even thought about it. But yeah, at the time I was like, okay, at 10 years, if I'm not going to stay, then I need to go and do something else.
What did you think you would have done?
I mean, I had an electrical background. I could
get that job at AT&T you was talking about. Laying wire.
At this time, I spoke Vietnamese. I mean, I knew I could find a job somewhere. I could do something, but or maybe go back to school. And we had the GI Bill, so I had options. So I go in to talk to the Mass Chief, same guy from DLI, and because he's now the senior enlisted for training, and I talked to him. I go, look, this is my situation. I love this job, but I can't sit as an E6 for another 5 years while everyone else is promoting and just do the same thing. So he's like, maybe you should be an officer. I'm like, fuck no. And I would go off on this tirade about, I'm here to be a master chief. I want to do that job. I enlisted because
I work for a living.
Yeah. And no way I was going to be an officer. And he says, after I rant for a while, he goes, look, and and this guy's very well spoken, and I can't say it like he did because I just don't remember it. But in essence, he said, Giff, everyone here has something to give to this community. You just need to find the right medium to do it. And if the enlisted route isn't working because of outside of your what you can do, I mean, it's a system. You're not going to change that. So maybe you just need to find a different way, and maybe being an officer is the right way to go. So I said, okay, I'll look at it. I'll at least consider it. And you had just, I think, didn't you just get picked up?
I got picked up I left for OCS in 1998.
Okay.
And I had applied in 1997 and didn't get it.
Right.
And so I had to try again.
Yeah, and I think he had mentioned that. So I looked at your program, but I think I was too old.
You were too old because we're the same age, and I didn't get it my first year, and I was like, well, I had some other career choices I was looking at. They were in the Navy, but I was like, okay, well, I'll go to a different command, but I'll take one more crack at this to see if I can get it, and I got it the second time. But you would have been too old to get that program.
I was too old. So they had another kind of a legacy program, the enlisted commissioning program, that they were kind of phasing out because they were going over to the Seaman to Admiral. And but the way you read it, I actually could apply for that. I was right at the line, but I could still qualify. So I thought, okay, I'll give it one chance. I'll put in a package. And we had a guy from the command who actually I did a platoon with who just got picked up. So I talked to him about it, and he kind of gave me some advice on the package. But I said, if I pick up chief this year, regardless of what happens, that's the route I'm going. So I put in the package and go through the whole process. And that year, they took 300 packages, and they accepted 150. So I had a 50% chance. I took the chief's exam that year, and I think 6% advanced to chief in the Navy. So I had a 6% chance of being a chief, or I had a 50% chance of being an officer. And I actually got picked up for the program that year, but the chief results hadn't come out yet. And I was determined, again, if I got picked up for chief, I would just turn down the program. But I didn't make chief that year, so I was like, okay, this is where I'm going.
And then what? You had to go to college to get through that program?
Yeah, so the unique thing about it, you had to have prior college to go. And the benefit, and I joined the Navy right out of high school. I mean, I graduated on Friday. That Monday, I was gone. But when I went to DLI,
you racked up some college.
That was DLI is actually an accredited university, and they have an accreditation. And while you were there, if you took a couple of extra classes at Monterey Peninsula College, you could actually get an associate's degree in foreign language. So, you're already in study mode when you're there. So it's like, yeah, easy. I'll take a couple extra courses, do a lab on a weekend or something. And so I did that. So I actually had 2 years of college on my record, and that's what I used to get in, because they only gave you had to finish they only gave you 2 years, but you had to be done before 31. And that was the other problem. I was going to be 31. You had to be commissioned before you were 31. And I only had like 3 semesters. But, I've been through DLI. I knew I could study. I was a comm guy. I can do this.
Guy can do it. You know what's freaking ridiculous? The program I did, I was an E5 at Team 1. I packed up my shit. I went to OCS for 13 weeks, and then I was an officer at SEAL Team 2.
And that was the better program.
It was it was ridiculous. It's the reason that's why it doesn't exist anymore, because it was too good. It was too awesome.
I agree.
Like I had, by the way, I had 0 college. It was like, okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead. Be an officer now. It was like, I was kind of looking over my shoulder like, are you serious? Is this happening? Cool. Right on. Yeah, I feel bad. You had to go and, get your DLI done, and now you had to go back to college and get a degree, man.
I guess the worst part about it, now, were you guaranteed to go back to the teams?
Yep.
I wasn't.
God.
So when I accepted, it was part of the interview process. Like, well, what if you don't come back to the teams?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, again, this is the '90s, late '90s. They didn't have that opening. So
now that you say that, here's the difference. They took 50 people from the entire Navy for my program. You know what I'm saying? So like the chances of getting picked up from my program were next to nothing because there was at least 1,000 of applications of people. I mean, that's my guess. That's not an official number, but a lot of people applied for that program because it was such a good program. It was created and endorsed by the Chief of Naval Operations. Like, it was a big program, and it was freaking hard to get picked up. So I guess that's why when you look at it percentage-wise, not too many people got that program that I got. I freaking got lucky.
So for me, by accepting the program, I was coming out of the community. They let me go to school, but when I graduated and got commissioned as an ensign, they could have sent me to SWO school. They could have, you could be a pilot, you could be whatever, and you had to reapply to get back into the community, which meant I had to take that PT test.
Dang.
From the All Hands magazine. I don't think it had changed that much, but we had to take that again. There was a couple of other guys with me. One I saw last night, but you had to reapply. You had to put in your package, and I remember driving up to DC to meet the detailer, and not the uniform one, but the civilian one that really ran things, and talking to her, giving her our package, and hey, we really want to get back. It was me and my buddy, and but I mean, we had good scores because I mean, my bachelor's degree after being at DLI was a joke, and I mean, and when that's your only job is to go to college, because I was still getting my paycheck, not any of the special pays or anything, but I was getting paid as an E6. They that's all you had to do was hand in your papers on time, which I had done 2-3 weeks early. So we had strong packages. We got picked up and picked back up to go straight in. But there was one guy that was in our consortium that did not.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Was he questionable?
He did 71 sit-ups.
Oh yeah, one of them, huh? You called him out, bro. When I was at OCS, before I left, one of the Master Chiefs at Team 1 said, hey, when you're getting ready to graduate OCS and you talk to the detailer, as you just described her, the civilian detailer that actually runs everything, he goes, when you talk to her, tell her when you want orders, tell her to look in her top left drawer for your orders. And I go, okay, roger that, Master Chief. So I'm at OCS. I'm 3 weeks from graduation. We can finally use the phone, and we got to square away our orders. I call the office. I said, hey, ma'am, my name is, Jocko Willink, and I'm about to graduate, and I was trying to get orders. I was hoping to go to Team 2. And she goes, wow, we got it. She starts going off. Well, we're filled. I'm going to have to look at that. And I said, and then I listened to her, and she was not sending me there. And then I said, Master Chief so-and-so. I said, Master Chief so-and-so told me to ask you to look in your top left drawer for your orders, for my orders. And she goes, oh, where do you want to go? And I go Team 2, and she goes, okay, I'll cut your orders this afternoon. Boom, done. Awesome. How's that for some good old boy network activity? That's so crazy, right? She was powerful. So and she always took care of me, and she took care of me, and she took care of all of my friends. Yeah. All my friends, she was awesome.
No, she was good to me too. And when we found out that we were getting back into the community, she's like, all right, so where do you want to go? And before I could even say, it's like anywhere on the East Coast, because I was, again, I was wanting to go back out to the West Coast. I speak Vietnamese. I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Is that because you went to college on the East Coast?
I did, because it was the only school that was Yeah, I didn't say that. So I had to graduate in 3 semesters, and I wanted to stay on the West Coast. So I applied for UCSD and all the local ones. Got accepted to all of them. However, they all said you have to do at least 2 years, 2 years minimum. I guess that's how they get their money. I don't know. So I was actually at a point where I didn't find any place that would let me go for 3 semesters. So I actually called the guy in charge of the program. He was a civilian, and I said, "Look, I've tried everything. I just can't," because you had to submit like a degree plan. And I said, I'm coming up short. I don't have anything, so I got to turn it down. He goes, call this guy. He's a retired captain, 06 captain at Norfolk State, and see what he can do for you. So I'm like, all right. Call him up, start telling my story, and he like stops me halfway. He goes, look, just send me all your transcripts. Just fax them.
Good old boy.
Yeah.
Good old boy network coming at
Just
you
fax
once
him.
again.
So I faxed him all my paperwork. Within 30 minutes, he faxes me back a training program, and they didn't get it. They said, if you can do it in 1 semester, we'll graduate you.
Damn.
And we'll get you commission. I'm like, all right. So I turned that in. I got accepted, but yeah, we had to move to Virginia to go to school, and then once I graduated, it was an East Coast team.
So where were you when September 11th happened?
So
what was your status?
So I
in
was
college,
still at
right?
school, but I was in my last semester, and it was a couple of months before graduation because I graduated in December. And I remember I was at home working on a paper, and I was listening to the local radio station, talk radio, and they came over and says, we're getting some reports, something happening. I got up, turned on the TV, and that's where I was. And I remember that day I was getting phone calls on my cell phone from people from all over that I didn't know. And they were trying to call somebody else, but I guess all the towers were real screwed up, so calls were getting directed to people that it wasn't, because I'd answer the phone and say, like, is Scott there? They were panicking. I'm like, you got the wrong number. He goes, no, this is Scott's number. I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I don't know anybody, and I got a couple of those. But and then like every other team guy, I'm looking, and I already had orders, so I knew what command I was going to by that point. And but I only had a couple of months left, so I wasn't making calls like, get me there, because I knew I was going there within a couple of months. So I just had to finish that 1 semester, graduate, get commission, and that day I got commission. I left the university, drove straight from Norfolk to Virginia Beach, and checked into SEAL Team 4.
And then what was your role at Team 4 when you got there?
So this was another one of I found out that kind of the issues of the program, that the day you graduate, New Butter Bars, Ensign Gifford, and I'm now at day 1. Well, everyone at the team, all the officers, especially the JOs, they've been a JO for a year and a half because they had to, finish school,
go to BUDS,
go to
jump school, go to SQT,
all that. So I'm
behind them technically
by a year and a half, even though I've had 12 years in the community at this point. To them, I'm just day 1 ensign. And so all the platoons are filled, and I show up, and again, this is right after 9/11, so everything's crazy, but things haven't changed enough yet to where they start deploying people differently. So we're still sending people to the different theaters, and I show up, and of course I want to get in a platoon. I'm ready to go, and they're like, yeah, everything's filled, so we're going to make you the training officer, and which I was okay with, because having been in training cell, I can run training. That's not hard. However, at that time, all the training had been taken away from the teams and centralized. So I was more of an LNO from the command. to the training department, which again wasn't bad, but at that time they didn't they just do like the unit level training, but the training where you train with the people that you're going to deploy with hadn't happened, or that was still at the team.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my focus, was coming up with a good ORE, and at that time the big thing was the weapons of mass destruction. So we had to come up with stuff where guys were wearing mop gear and all that craziness. But so that was kind of my my focus during that first workup. But then right before deployment, one of the JOs of the platoon that's going to Afghanistan gets fired. Oof. And
ding 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 ding.
Where am I? I'm like, and I didn't have a job, when you deploy, because the whole team deployed. I was just going to be an ops assistant, but I'm ready to go. And so they ended up putting me in that platoon as the third O, third O at the time, which again is kind of crazy because I'm 12 years, and I think the big learning experience from that was it was tough for a lot of the other JOs, because again we were still sending guys to South America, to other theaters, to because we still had responsibilities there.
Right.
And here's me, who's junior to everybody, and I get the one platoon that's going to Afghanistan, and so I could tell in the JO jungle that I wasn't their favorite person.
Right.
But again, I was a lot older than most of them, and their approval wasn't really what I was looking for. But it was a great opportunity. But there were problems there, and even inside the platoon there were some feelings that
Why'd the guy get fired?
I don't remember. I wasn't really part of that. It was something internal. I never really asked. When I showed up to the platoon, my thing was, I'm just here to do what I can to make the platoon better. We're going to Afghanistan, and at this time, that was right when Iraq was starting up. So a lot of the focus wasn't on Afghanistan. Everybody was kind of focused on Iraq, and I'm like, I'm here to help out. You let me know how I can do it. But again, the hard part, and even for me, I'm not a 1-year ensign. I have 12 years in, and I've done a lot of stuff. And it was hard for me at times, and this was kind of my first being as an officer in a platoon.
Yeah.
I had a lot to learn of. You're not, the E6 anymore. You're
Want to hear when I learned that? So I'm at Team 2. I freaking have an awesome platoon filled with awesome guys, and we're going on a trip, and we're building a pallet. And we already talked about pallet building today. Like, hey, you're going to make a squared away pallet. So I'm down there. I'm seeing the pallet being built, and I'm like, hey, we need to move this box over here. We need to get to put these rigs over here. And I start building the pallet. And my LPO, who's a freaking great guy and a great friend of mine, Scotty Neal, Navy SEAL, who unfortunately passed away, but he was a freaking great LPO. And he looks at me and he goes, hey, sir. And I was like, oh, damn. He goes, why don't you let me do my job and you go do yours? And it was the perfect thing to say to me. And I just was like, he's 100% right. I'm down here trying to build a pallet. These guys, this is what they do. This is his domain, right? The LPO is going to run that shit. And I was down there stepping on his toes. And from that point on, in the switch went in my head that if I don't need to be giving my input, I'm not going to give it. If I don't need to prove to anybody that I know how to build a pallet. No one cares. They want to build the pallet. It's their pallet. They want to come up with the navigation route. And you know what? The hardest one obviously is like, oh, they want to come up with a communication plan. If it's going to work, if it's a viable plan, we're going with their plan, and I'm not going to interfere with it. And that's the moment, the exact moment in time when Scotty Neal said to me, hey, sir, why don't you let me do my job and you go do yours? And I was like, roger that. Part of me was a little bit paranoid, I think, too, of like, I want to show everyone that I'm a hard worker. Like, hey, I'm here to move. And I would continue to do that throughout my career of like, oh, if you got stuff to move, I'll move it. And I'll keep my mouth shut. Because I know you guys don't want to hear from me about how to build a pallet, about how to set up the range, about all that stuff. That's the E-man's domain. Yeah. And I didn't mess with it. As long as there was viable plans happening, we're going with what the plans are.
No, so true. And I had a very similar experience. I think it was even with the pallet as well. And I was very fortunate that the LPO was just so squared away. Just one of the best people I've ever worked with, still a very good friend. And but because I was in his squad, you know, I dealt with him quite a bit. And we came up with a signal that if I was out of my box, yeah. So if we were at a meeting, he would like rub his forehead or something. And that was like, okay, shut up and just let things go. Yeah. And yeah, just phenomenal guy. And you need that because again, it's hard for us that had that background to step back and learn that. But
yep.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And when I had in my second platoon, I had the officer that got fired, and I had the legendary officer take over, and he was super experienced. He was a prior senior chief. And he didn't put his he didn't tell us how to build pallets. He didn't tell us how to do anything. He asked us. He put us in charge. He was awesome. And as soon as my LPO said to me, "Hey, why don't you go do your job?" I was like, "Man, that's what the best leader that I saw did. Mm-hmm. He did that for us, and I'm going to do that from now on." Good little lesson learned.
Yeah, no, it was.
So what was that deployment like? So you're pretty early into Afghanistan.
Yes.
So what year was this? Like 2003?
Yes. Yeah. So it was early, but more importantly, again, everyone was focused on Iraq. So we were kind of like a task unit light. So it was mainly a platoon with some supporting people, some head shed guys, and we weren't really established yet in kind of our operational sense. So we were just trying to find work. And we did a lot of special reconnaissance, a lot of driving around Afghanistan, mm-hmm. and non-armored up Humvees and with the doors off. It was just too heavy, and so we did a lot of those missions. We did a couple of direct action, and it was a good deployment. Again, I learned a ton. I was with really good people, and we had our issues just like everything else, but it was a good learning experience from that. But the main leadership things, and the OIC and I had a couple of words sometimes, and it was, I think that, because he told me, there was a feeling that, I kind of got lucky to be in this, and I think he made a comment like, some guys really earned to be here. And I was thinking, what do you think I've been doing the last 12 years? All this, when I was in my first platoon, you're still riding your Huffy bike up and down the street. So, I try not to take it personally. And, it was a lot of growing for me too, because again, it was kind of a strange time. But, we came back from that, didn't lose anybody. And it was a good first deployment to a combat zone because we got to shake a lot of stuff out, and we weren't really driving like we were later, or definitely what you guys were doing later.
Yeah, that's such a nice gentle ramp up, and I had that too. Like even literally when I got to Baghdad in my first deployment, the SEA, who's a freaking like awesome guy. His wife used to say that me and him were soulmates, but we just always got along like brothers. But he was already on the ground, and so we showed up. And the night we showed up, he's like, "Hey, we're getting mortared from this area. Take your platoon out and go check it out." And so I'm like, "Okay, cool." And basically, he just kind of made it up just to get us out there, shake out the whatevers. Okay, look, you're in Iraq now. Get over it. It's time. And then you came back, and he's like, "All right, cool. Now let's start looking at our first mission." And then that whole deployment was a nice ramp up of learning opportunities to learn. Going back to your point of like when someone says you're lucky to be here. I was just talking about this on the academy, training leaders, and it's such a good. And we actually just talked about this on the underground. Just saying like, yeah, I agree. And it's so disarming to people when you say, yeah, I'm 100% lucky to be here. Absolutely. And
I wish I had that advice back
we all
then,
wish.
because that's not what I said.
We all wish we had that advice. You're talking to the guy that was telling the instructor of our communications course that, no, it's Zulu time.
Zulu is always Zulu.
Zulu is always Zulu. I was 19 years old. That guy was, what, 35? He was a senior chief?
He was definitely a chief.
He's a chief.
Yeah,
so he's a chief. So I'm telling a chief, hey, listen, chief, let me tell you how it is, bro. Jocko's got word to put out, son. So yeah, we all wish we could go back and maybe freaking check some stuff, but that's a good one. Like, hey, when somebody tells you something, and it's like, okay, yeah, absolutely. It's disarming. It's a good way to understand what their perspective is. It's a good move. It's a hard one to learn.
It is.
Because that's a shot, right? You're like looking at him, literally thinking to yourself, are you kidding me now?
It was a total ego thing,
Yeah.
and I fell right into it. And but yeah, What
was your op tempo like on that deployment?
It wasn't
Not too crazy?
not too. I mean, we were doing like long patrols, like week long, 8 days, 9 days with resupplies, that kind of stuff. So it was tiring on the guys. It wasn't real strong kinetic. It was just long drives, and we'd just drive around and see what we could find, and we'd talk, try to talk to people, try to get an idea.
And the 2000, the IED threat wasn't heinous yet.
No, and again, we were in non-up armored Humvees. We had the doors off, so we could easily engage, and so yeah, that wasn't big at that point.
So then what'd you do when you got home from that deployment?
So I got home. I'm like, all right, now I can finally do my AOIC slot, because that was really what I wanted. I wanted to start at the beginning, so you could do a good mentoring. And I get back and say, hey, I'm ready for my platoon. They're like, oh, you just did it. You just had your AOIC slot, so it's on a fit rep.
Yep.
So now you got to wait another 2 years, because I'm still behind. So my year group is still kind of working their way through SQT at this point, and but I've already had my thing. So the new CO of the command came in, and I talked to him. And again, it was like, all right, how am I going to be relevant? So at that time, a lot of people were getting the going to the Army ASO schools, because that was
so like advanced special operations stuff,
right? And so I'm like, all right, that's what you is that what you need? Then I'll go it. And it was, again, nobody wanted to do it because they had to deal with the Army, and I knew why. And because the one school was in Bragg for like 3 months. It was a long time, probably 2 months. And it was exactly 4-hour drive from Virginia Beach to Bragg. And it was, one of those regular schools, you do it during the week, and then on the weekend you do whatever. I had to, in the beginning, I would drive home for the weekend and then drive back on Sunday for class on Monday. And I stopped driving home, because I knew if I went home, I wouldn't go back, because I hated it that bad. And it was just
what part did you hate about it?
It's just the way the Army ran it. It was kind of the protector of the tab type thing. And it wasn't just me, because there were just a couple of Navy guys, and it was mostly Army, all SF guys, and all great people. And I got along with everyone, and but it was. And even they were getting frustrated from the silliness, and it was silly. And all of us had 12, 13, 14 years. I mean, these were senior guys, and like, I still got to prove to you that I get to be here.
Like, what kind of stuff were they making you prove?
Just, it was, a lot of the stuff was very subjective, and they would test you. So they would fail you on something to see how you reacted. And some guys were like, screw this, I don't need this, and they would just leave. And then, but they would just kind of wanted to test you, so you have to do it again. And it was a lot of just kind of administrative kind of stuff and I was a class leader, which so I had to meet with them every day, and they had to tell me how to take out the trash and all that. So whatever. Okay.
Get some.
Yeah. But, you know, I got through it, and it was good because the community was it wasn't something that we were used to, and we didn't really have anybody qualified. I think it's better now. But we needed that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got on that next deployment to Iraq, it was somewhat a benefit to have that type of skill. And so I had a small cell
Mm-hmm.
of mostly chiefs, because again all the platoons were filled, but you had guys that weren't in a platoon. So we all just got trained up, and then when we deployed, we kind of got farmed out to different units. And our command had the PSD, Personal Security Detachment, for the top 5.
So
And-
this is now 2005.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It was that summer,
Got it.
pretty sure.
Got it.
And so my team of guys, again, kind of got farmed out because the Army was kind of running that at the time. So I got put into an ODA house north of Baghdad, and for about 3 months. And because their guy that did that job had to leave.
Was it on a river?
No.
I did some work up there. I was on the river. It's actually a crazy area and an awesome ODA team.
Yeah,
But
and I have to say that these guys were phenomenal to work with. And you know, I get asked all the time, I'm sure you do too, you know, who's better, the Army SF or SEALs? And I mean, obviously we are, but but truly, I mean, these guys were professional, like awesome professionals, and their concept was a little bit, you know, they just did things a little bit different, not better or worse, but they were just a well-developed group of guys. And what struck me as the most beneficial, and what I really admire them, the leaders, so the OIC, and they had a senior enlisted. Yeah, they only had one officer. So I show up, and you know, they didn't ask for me, you know, or really they needed some help, and I show up, and I talked to the OIC, and we were about the same age, and we, you know, talked for a little bit, and so they have a meeting of the group of the house. So they bring everybody in, and I remember, you know, they kind of introduced me to everybody, and you know, they made a couple of Navy jokes, which was fine. But then the senior enlisted, who again just a phenomenal individual, he goes, "So today, Mr. Gifford is part of this team, and he is one of us." And they call themselves the Eagles. He goes, "Today he is an Eagle, and from as long as he lives in this house, he is an Eagle, and you will treat him that way." And from that whole time there, I felt like I was part of the team. And I you know, even though we didn't go through the same training or anything, they brought me in, and they were just a phenomenal group of guys.
And how long were you up there working with them?
About 3 months.
What were you doing?
So,
I mean, with this new skill set, which we'll say is pretty much intelligence, gathering intelligence through various methodologies is what you're doing, and you were basically helping them gather intelligence?
So I was the primary, like, report writer. So when all the information came in, I did the evaluation on it, write the reports, and send it out. The reason that we chose to do that by farming guys out was because of the PSD mission. You know, they were really relying on intel heavily, because you know, they were going out for public things, and you know, when there's a threat, they want to know about it. And there were all these units scattered everywhere, so we chose certain specific places that we figured there was could be some pretty hot intel that concerned the top 5, and they wanted to be able to get that information right away. So by having kind of a liaison in those houses, if something came up, then they could we could get the information to our guys doing the mission very quickly.
What were the living conditions? Were they all right?
It was awesome. So we lived in a house in the middle of town, and then it was adjacent usually to a Iraqi military base, and then so we're like the deep inside perimeter.
Right.
And you had several rings, and at that house we used to get hit maybe at least once a week, if not more. And we all just go up to the roof. We had stuff everywhere, and it was just you battle until they stopped. You weren't moving, so you just kept going until it was over. And so you had everything right by your bed, and as soon as the alarm went off, because we always had somebody on watch, that was they would send out, and everyone would just go up, and then we would run our operations from there. And then and we did a couple of DAs. I did those with them, and they were good. Again, we went out.
Did you guys have a partner force that you were working with the Iraqis that you were on base with, or were you guys just doing hits kind of solo?
We did have a partner force, but we didn't really use them that much. They were kind of on their own. I think some of our guys did some teaching over there, but if we did something, it was pretty much just us. And so I went to, I would go to the range with the guys, and they would kind of teach me some of their TTPs. And again, not better or worse, just a little different, but total professionals. And I was able to work with them, that 3 months, and it was phenomenal. It was one of the best parts of that tour. But even on the wide scale, just to be able to work with guys from that ODA was phenomenal.
So then so you were only there for 3 months. What'd you do when you got done with that?
So after 3 months, they were switching out. So they were kind of off cycle from us. So they had about the same length of deployments, but they rotated out. That way, all SF wasn't rotating out at the same time. So when they left, the new ODA that took over that house had everybody they needed. And
apparently Chris Gifford wasn't part of that team.
there wasn't. It was like, we appreciate it, but we're good, kind of thing. And I think it was kind of more of a headshed thing. And there's no way to force, no reason to force it on them. I kind of explained to them, this is what we're looking for. If you get this information, please just send it to these people. So I got brought back, and there were 2 teams deployed at that time. So one from the East Coast and one from the West Coast. The East Coast team was doing the PDS. The West Coast was doing more kinetic type stuff. So they needed somebody. I think their ops officer had to go back or something, but they needed a spot filled. So my command asked if I would just go down and work there for a month. And so I did that. And I was just in the ops shop, or in the talk, running ops, getting all the the briefs in, making sure, and then while they were outside the wire, make sure we were monitoring the operating picture and everything. And that's when your old roommate was down there.
Oh, right on.
And
awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome because now it's
him and
old
me,
team one guy.
Him and me got to do missions, man, together.
Really?
Yeah, and there was like a weird confluence of events that happened for a short period of time, and we were like out in the middle of Iraq together, just doing ops, and it was pretty freaking cool, man.
Yeah, we did one mission together. It was kind of a circus, but it was a target that was like right outside the gate. And I mean, you could almost see it if you looked over the wall from the compound. You could see the target. I mean, it was pretty close. And for some reason, people came out of the woodwork to go on this op. So we had like officers and chiefs.
Oh, you mean strap
masters?
hangers? I thought you were talking about enemy personnel coming out of the woodwork. I'm like, here we go. It's like, no. We had strap hangers galore.
We had a lot of people who needed to experience to outside the wire, and so they were going to be on this thing. And
they're all looking at the con ops like, hey, it's only 1,200 yards away. Let's get on that one.
Yeah, and so we're we get out there and it's just a clown show because people are running everywhere. So I look over at our friend and he looks at me and goes, "Come with me." So we go to like this barrier position. We're kind of on the edge as a blocking position because we were away from everybody. We're like, we're going to sit this one out. We're going to sit right here until all this is over. And it was a dry hole or whatever, but it was, it was funny.
He's like a real life Sam Elliott with his attitude,
Definitely.
Just like, well, we're not doing that, just a freaking classic. And then so you were done with that, but you still had more on the deployment, right?
So a couple of months left. I go back to the PSD mission, and we just help out. We still have liaisons to some of the outside units, of course, all the OGAs and all that. So I spent 2 months just kind of bouncing around and just helping out in ops there, just to try to get everything out. I don't think I did any more missions or anything. Most of that was that first 3 months. So it was just, and then, of course, right before you leave, now all the awards have to be written, all the, fit reps need to be done. So I was part of that.
You got your
officer crew.
And then what'd you do after that?
So we got back from that deployment, and I'm still not up with my year group. So I talked to the CO, and either he recommended but he's like, why don't you go to Germany for a couple of years? You can do
the CO had been in Germany before, right?
Oh yeah,
I saw
you know who he is.
Yeah. He's like freaking awesome.
One of the top.
Yeah, freaking
definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely one of the top 5. But he's like, you should go out there. You'll enjoy it. And I remember he told me, he goes, if you live on base, I will come out there and punch you. Because he's like, you need to get out in town, live amongst the populace, and experience living overseas like you should.
I went to his house when he was living overseas in Germany, and it was absolutely freaking epic. I wish I had taken pictures. I wish I knew the name of the village or the house because it's still there. It was like one of these postcard villages, and he had this crazy like old house that was completely like gutted and modernized inside. It was freaking
very
awesome.
German. German.
It was freaking badass. Yeah. So him and by the way, like everything that guy does is like all dialed in. Yeah. Like I remember I was going to his house and he's like, "Hey, you need to wear a shirt." I'm like, "Bro, I don't like." I'm wearing a shirt. He's like, "No, a shirt, like an actual human shirt, not a freaking jujitsu t-shirt, you idiot." And I was like, "I don't have any shirts." And he goes, "All right, come." And he opens up his closet. His closet is like a room, and he's got, no kidding, hanging up just button down, whatever, really nice shirts in the color of like the rainbow, like starting with, what is it, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, with freaking 9 shirts of red, and it goes all the way through. And I'm like, bro, are you freaking James Bond or what? I don't even have a shirt, much less 49 shirts of varying colors. But yeah, and that was all in this completely dialed house overlooking this green, lush valley. It was crazy beautiful.
Yeah. And again, a phenomenal person, and for what he's done for the community, and just a great guy. So he convinced me this would be a good place to go, and he was right. It was probably one of my best tours, because you move your family out there, and you're part of. Not the war necessarily, because it's not in that AO, but you're still doing really good stuff. And at that time, Africa was really starting to pick up, so I was able to be there as that was kind of starting. And again, with my background and all these intel type schools, it was a very good fit. So. I worked in the as a task officer there at the unit, and we were moving guys down to Africa. So we would send guys. They would basically check into the unit in Germany and then move straight to Africa for 4 to 6 months sometimes. And, working through embassies. So that was my experience of, starting to deal how the State Department works and how all these other
good times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was, when you retire and you know what you don't want to do, that was one of them. I knew I did not want to. State Department wasn't in my, but they're good people. They do a hard job. They really do.
So you wrap up. What's that? A 2-year billet?
It's a 2-year billet, and I was there exactly 2 years. We left exactly 2 years, and
now it must be time for your platoon commander tour because you already knocked out your AOIC.
Yeah. So everything now I'm aligned with the rest of my year group. So I get sent to Team 10 to do a platoon commander, and because I came from Germany and I understood how the AfricaCom and EUCOM work.
I can see where this is going.
That they put me in that task unit, and again I was fine with that because I'm here to support the effort. Nobody wants to do it, then I don't have anybody breathing down my neck trying to get my spot. So I'm finally getting my platoon commander, and I'm just stoked about it. So I show up to Team 10, and I get in the task unit, and I kind of get an indication pretty soon that all the guys that just came back were in, I think it was Iraq. Yeah, I think they came in from Iraq. Maybe it was Afghanistan. But they just come back. They had a really good deployment, high energy, intensive, and but now they were on the EUCOM. And we had a bunch of new guys who never hadn't deployed yet, and they're on EUCOM, and they're seeing all their friends getting ready to go to Afghanistan, Iraq, because I think we were still sending people to both. So yeah, there was that kind of idea that that's where we want to be, and hey, I get that. But as our mutual chief used to say, orders aren't invitations; they're orders, and this is what you're given, and you need to. It's our responsibility as the leadership to make sure our guys are ready for that, and that's what I was doing. But there was a lot of, if we do really well, then we'll get moved over to here. Somebody will get fired, and we'll be able to take that mission. And again, there's always that chance, but there's also the chance you're going to do what you were assigned to do. So we really need to focus on that. And there was a big, I guess, kind of rub between me and the leadership, and especially being in Germany for 2 years. I saw platoons come out all the time, and you could tell the ones that were ready to do the mission and accepting, and they did a great job, and then the ones that are like, hey, we're just sitting here until we get the word that we're going in. And guess what? The word never comes. I mean, again, they may take 1 or 2 because somebody gets hurt, but we have a mission too here.
Right. So
there was a big leadership challenge on my side. Is I need to keep the guys motivated, interested in this job, and I would tell them, there's good stuff going on. There's really important stuff, and for the most part, I think the guys accepted that. Some didn't, but yeah, it's a tough thing to work through.
I remember one thing that always stuck in my mind. There was a Master Chief Faculty. So Master Chief Faculty, who died in 2017, but he was had a big impact on all of us at Team 1 at the time. But I remember him telling me a story that there was a Vietnam guy that had come home that had done like a pretty heroic deployment in Vietnam. And that guy was fax like LPO. And they're out in the desert doing their desert warfare training, and that guy who was like the combat vet, he was like, they're out on patrol, and he had his like rifle up over his shoulder and just kind of like walking like it didn't matter. And I think he was the platoon chief, and you could see the just disappointment as Fac was telling me this story. And it was one of those things that, again, he probably told me that when I was 22 or 23. I never forgot that fact, not only of, hey, don't be the guy that's like, been there, done that, I don't need to be fired up for training anymore, but also what an impact that has on everybody else. And you don't want to be like that. Then fast forward however many years, I was now at Tradet, West Coast Tradet, and I had a guy that's a great guy, and he was in Ramadi with me as a new guy, and now he's in his second platoon, and we're out at the Mount facility, and like, you know, we're training's hard and kicking ass and blah blah blah. And I talked to him about whatever, but I remember him saying to me, he says, I'm kind of getting burnt out. And this was during Mount training in his second platoon. And I'm like, I go, hey bro, you remember when you and I were in a workup together? And he goes, yeah. And I go, that was my 7th workup. And he was like, he just got that look on his face, and he goes, roger that, because I was fired up in my 7th freaking time to go. Let's rock and roll, like taking everything seriously. And that's just what you want to do. So that infection can spread. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Team guys want to go to combat. That's what they want to do. And when they don't get the chance, it hurts. But like you said, you got to pick it up. Okay, this is what we're doing. Let's do it to the best of our ability. And the only thing you can do is just keep going on deployments. Like, the God of War is going to do what he's going to do. And hopefully you get blessed by him. And if that happens, great. And if it doesn't happen, keep working, because he's watching. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. No, and you saw it, you know, guys would, you know, kind of have to get through that rotation, but then the next one they go back, or, you know, they get another shot at combat. And, you know, we all knew eventually it was going to calm down anyway, but nobody knows when, and you don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss it.
And I really felt for the new guys, because, you know, all they're seeing is their friends that are going, and they didn't do anything wrong. And that was really a big kind of complaint that I had about how it was perceived is, you know, we're waiting for, you know, if they get into trouble, then we get into that spot. It's like, well, so are we here because we got in trouble? You know, how do we end up here?
And are we hoping that our teammates are screwed up?
Yeah.
Because that's not a good attitude to have.
So we get that spot. So my thing was, look, again, the war is bigger than just what's going on in CENTCOM. We have a mission to do. It's a good mission. It has value. And you know, thinking back, you know, maybe I could have done better on certain things, but yeah, I mean, it was what it was, and we actually had a good deployment. I took a crew of people to Africa, and we were there for several months, and we did good stuff, and you know, I like to think that we, you know, moved the needle hopefully a little bit, but it was, yeah, you know, I think most people that were with us kind of got that after a while.
And then what'd you do when you got home from that deployment?
So I got home, and so I'm looking at TU commander, and but I didn't want to stay at Team 10 for different reasons, but those positions were already filled. So it's like, okay, I need to move on. And so now I'm caught up to my year group, but it's still a little bit different because I've had all these other experiences, and because of a lot of the, you know, victim of my own success, a lot of the schools I went to kind of put me on a little bit of a different track, which was fine. And so I ended up taking an ops tour at another command there in Virginia, and which was great. And again, great experiences and everything. But it's kind of where I was when that was coming to an end. I met with the detailer. So now I'm at 21 years, 21 and a half years. And I met with the detailer, and I wanted to take over East Coast training, the CO of that kind of what you did, but on the East Coast. And I knew the guy that had the position, good friend. And I talked to him about it. He's like, oh, yeah, you would do great here. And it lined up. And so I talked to the detailer, and he goes, you need more joint time. I'm like, oh, okay. Which means, you get orders to probably Tampa, and you move your family there. And at least at the time, then you deploy overseas for a year or so and write reports for others, and work on your JMP and all that. And your family sits there and because it's a PCS move. And at the time, my wife had a great job in Virginia. She was working for the governor's office, and she wasn't really wanting to move. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can do kind of a bachelor kind of thing. And but then I thought, I've had 21 years then. I think maybe this is time that I find something else. And I was very fortunate. The Navy was great to me. I got to do everything that I wanted to do. I had a great career, and I felt like I had closure. And I don't, put it on the detailer. I mean, he's trying to fill these billets. Yep. And for an officer at 10, 11 years, that is a great move. Yep. And, that's going to set you up for your XO tour and, probably another staff job and CO. But, I wasn't an officer at 12 years. I was an officer at 21, 22 years. And I just felt it was time to retire and try something else. And so I went home and talked to my wife about it, and she's like, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about retiring. She's like, okay, whatever. Go in Monday, put my paperwork to retire, and went back and like, okay, I did. She goes, what'd you do? I'm like, I retired. She goes, you did what? It's like, yeah, I did it.
How long was it between when you dropped your papers and when you actually retired?
Probably about 6 months or so. You have to. I had a lot of leave built up that I needed to get rid of, and I had made lieutenant commander, but because I wasn't doing the full time, they didn't commit or go to that next step, and I just retired as a lieutenant.
Oh, those savages.
Well, they were like, you have to do another 3 years. And honestly, I did the math.
Yeah.
And going from 03E to 04 is not that big of a jump than going from a regular 03, especially when you have, 20-some years. And the math, I think I would have gotten maybe an extra $100 on my retirement. And it just wasn't worth another 3 years. I felt like I could do something else. And
so how was the transition? What'd you do next?
Well, so it was a lot harder than I thought it would be because, again, we grew up in the SEAL teams, and we all, that's what we knew, that's what we did. And even to this day, I tell people I still have dreams that I'm still in uniform. And, I'm at some command somewhere, and I'm talking to people, but I'm still.
Somebody just called because one of the guys got in trouble.
Yeah,
like I always have that dream.
Put a report.
Oh God, someone got arrested. Someone got a DUI. Like here we go. I got to go yank somebody out of jail. Whatever.
So it was. I have to have a new focus and a new mission. And so my thing was I want to learn about business. I've been in government since I was 18, 19, and I've been in leadership positions, and I think you would agree. The leadership's not different.
Nope.
There may be some different terms, but it's all the same. But there's other things about business that I didn't really understand, like what is marketing and what is, social media was was starting to be a big thing. And, at that time we couldn't even have any accounts on social media. And I think it's changed now. I think it's a little bit better, because it kind of hurts guys getting out that don't have that presence, because that's how a lot of business is done now on LinkedIn and stuff. So I felt I need to learn business. I need to get more informed on that. And I still had half of my GI Bill left. So I thought, I could go to grad school, but I still want to learn a little bit more about how it runs first. So I make sure if I go to grad school for a business degree, that's really what I want to do. So I looked for just a way to get into business. So one thing, I had a friend a pilot friend that got out kind of the same time, and he was starting a consulting company. And he asked me about coming on as as kind of like a 1099 contractor. Excuse me. So that's fine. I'll work with you, and we'll do that. And as I was doing my the transition classes, what do they call it?
They call it TAP. I didn't do it.
Yeah,
I didn't do any of it.
So I did TAP.
I just said later.
Yeah, it was mostly I want to say it's a waste of time because it had some value to it, but they had like this entrepreneur class, which was an hour. It was during your lunch hour, so instead of you ate your lunch at a table and somebody talked about it. So they said, if you want to start a business, just find something you like and start a business. So I'm thinking, what do I like to do? What would be fun? I knew I did not want to do government, so I didn't want to work for any of the alphabet soup. I didn't want to do stay on at any of the commands or work as a GS. I just want to do something totally different, real business. And I thought, I love music. I've been playing music all my life. I'm going to join a band.
Somehow we missed this whole story. What freaking music did you play?
I played upright bass. Well, actually, when I was at like Team 1, I played saxophone.
That's right. I remember that you played saxophone.
And I would bring it on the trips. I had a little alto.
Now I remember that. Yeah, I forgot about that. And I would blow up that sax, bro.
And I was not that good. I was actually.
I remember that.
Yeah, I was not good. And I played, through high school and but I was never really good enough to do it. But I always liked the bass. It was always something that I really enjoyed.
Did you play it? When did you start playing? Oh, so you just liked it?
Yeah.
Okay, check.
But I had enough music background that I could figure out. So I just bought one, started learning how to play it.
When you say bass, are you talking bass guitar or are you talking stand-up bass?
No. So at that time it was electric.
Okay.
Bass guitar. And for some reason it just came like it was natural.
Easier than Vietnamese, apparently.
Very, very much so. And so I kind of took some private lessons, and I just kind of took to it. And then after doing that for a while, as I was getting out, trying to find bands, there was the market was pretty heavy with bass players. It's probably a lot of guitar players that don't play that well play bass.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what they told me. So, I need to find how to stand out. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to play upright bass because nobody wants to do it. It's a big instrument. You have to have a car, or a truck.
You have to have a van.
And it's fretless, so it just scares people. Right. But I'm going to learn it. So I bought one.
How much does a stand-up bass cost? Like for your starter model that you get?
So I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I didn't really, I kind of bypassed the starter and got a nice kind of pro model, a Engelhardt. And so it was about $2,000, around $2,000.
That's it?
Yeah.
Dang, bro.
And
that's actually way cheaper than I thought it was going to be.
But, it's a plywood. It's not like a carved, 200-year-old.
I have electric guitars that are way more than that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
More than that.
Absolutely.
A ridiculous amount of money because I'm stupid.
But this, it's a new one. It's not a classic, but it plays really well. And so I worked on that.
So when they don't have a fret, how do you know where to hold down?
So I do have markers on the side. It's like the dots that are on a guitar. It's the same. And but you have to listen, and it really forced me to listen to what the rest of the band is doing and make sure I'm got the right tone. And I worked on it. Like I took 6 months of just.
How many hours a day?
2-3 hours, and I would take a break and go back to it, and just worked on it.
So you mean 5 to 6 hours a day?
Not that much.
Okay.
Probably about 2 or 3 hours.
But you're retired at this point? This is when you're retired?
Well, no, I was still kind of
you were wrapping up your career,
wrapping up and going through
and
terminal leave.
3 or 4 hours of bass a day.
Yeah, and then when I felt comfortable, I started looking for bands to play in. So I go on, where else would you go but
Craigslist?
Yeah,
there you go.
And just typed in upright bass, and sure enough, this guy posted that he was doing an acoustic blues thing, and he was looking for an upright bass, and it's like, yeah,
there's
I'll
only
do that.
one. You got the job.
Yeah. Well, so I called him up and or messaged him or whatever, and he said, show up to this open mic night. In
Learn
Hampton.
to play in front of a real live audience.
And he didn't tell me what we were going to play or anything, and so I showed up, and he's like, all right, we're playing in this key, and I was all over the place. I mean, I was nervous. It wasn't my first time playing live, but I was just trying to follow what was going on.
Yeah, because you played sax live in 8th grade at the 8th grade freaking student council meeting.
It wasn't that bad, but yeah, I played a couple of songs. I was like, yeah, that really sucked. And afterwards, he goes, okay, yeah, let's meet next week and do another 3. I'm like, okay. And by that time, now I knew kind of what he was looking for, and we did it, and then we were like, yeah, let's start a band. Brought in a friend of mine that was a drummer, and eventually a sax player, and we created the band. And my intent, again, was not really to be a musician or an artist, really. And I don't really consider myself an artist. I'm artistic, and I understand, how to do it, but I wanted to run the business. So I wanted to, manage the books. I wanted to work on the marketing. I wanted to learn how the social media worked and how that, worked into getting us gigs. And then we got into recording and writing, and I helped, write some of the songs, and we recorded a couple of albums so we could sell, because that was a big thing when you were gigging. It's great to get that money for the night, but if you have merch, right? Get the merch out there, then we saw things go up, and I could show each year, we were making more money, and we were doing better.
How often are you gigging?
So, the first year, probably about 30 or so gigs.
Dang.
But by the 3rd year, I mean, we were touring, so I would do a 2-week.
So now you're out of the Navy completely.
Yeah.
And you're going on tour in your blues band and playing stand-up bass.
Yep. And Herbie D and the Dangermen is the
Are you still around?
No. So I'll get to that in a minute. But so by the 3rd year, we're playing probably 180 gigs.
Making money,
yeah.
Playing how big of shows? Clubs?
Yeah. I mean, we would get a couple of festivals. We would get, mostly bars, that kind of scene.
What do you make a night in the bar?
It depends on where you are, but $400, $500.
And how many people are in the band?
4. Yeah.
So from a business perspective,
yeah, I mean, but
we're thinking to try something else.
No, not at all. So it makes you really look at the business model, and because all businesses have the same, all successful businesses have the same concept. You got to make it for a dime. You got to sell it for $1. You got to make it have it for me. If you don't do that, you're going to go out of business. Now, you can supplement it with outside income, but eventually it'll fold. You got to make it for a dime, sell it for $1, and make it have it for me.
Did you make that up right there? Or
no,
where's that come from?
I learned it when I was in my MBA program.
No one taught me that, by the way.
That was basically my MBA and those 3 sentences. That was 2 years of grad school. But it makes you, especially in a venture like that, it really makes you look at your cost. Are you really making it for a dime, or are you spending 90 cents? And of course, the numbers are arbitrary. But if you're not, then how do you cut that down? So as we were touring, in the beginning we were getting hotel rooms. Of course, we were all staying in the same room because there were 4 guys. But eventually we're like, okay, how can we cut that down? So we like one of the things we got on couch surfing. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have. So when I was 19.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had a band profile as for couch surfing, and as I was making the tour, I would say, okay, we're going to be in this town. We would submit, hey, this 4-piece band is coming to town. Could we stay at your house? And surprisingly, a lot of people let us do it, and it's free.
And it's free.
It's free, and of course we would try to do special stuff. So we of course give them a CD or a T-shirt or something, and if we were there for a day or two, we'd break out the instruments in their living room and just give them a little concert. And it was great. And what was really nice about it is because we stayed with them, we told them where we were playing that night. They would usually come out and bring some friends. So that would, butts and seats. That's a big part of it. So yeah, make it for a dime. You got to get your costs down. And we learned, like, buy your water not at a gas station, buy it at Walmart before you go because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And all these little things to get the price down. And then you look at, are you selling it for $1? Are you really getting the top price? And you don't set the price, the market sets the price, supply and demand. And so that's what we are focusing on. Where can we get the best bang for our buck? If we play at a festival or something, the focus isn't on the money you get to play. The focus is on the merch. So having the guys actually push the merch, put the CDs in your hand as you go around and talk to people because they see it in your hand, they want to buy it. And you don't just sit back and wait for them to come to you. You got to get out. So are you, making that price, and is there enough of a profit margin there that the business is actually going to survive? And then the most important part, as you know, you got to make it habit forming. If somebody just watches you once and they're like, hey, that was great, and they don't follow you, then how are you going to sell them, the new album when it comes out, or your new, the new song or whatever? You got to get that fan, down the funnel to get them from interested to fan to real fanatic of the super fan, where they're going to buy your stuff as soon as it comes out. So that's what I learned during that time. How do you actually physically do that? And so we did it for 4 years, and had to.
Was that your job for 4 years?
Yes. So I was doing a little bit of the consulting on the side, and there were other like 1099 type jobs that I was doing from here to there. But again, I was very fortunate that I married up, so my wife was making good money. We don't have any kids, so I'm not putting anyone through college, and I have a good retirement. Yeah. So I was able to do that full time.
And so what happened?
So
at the end?
Well, it's like any business. You have that arc, and there comes a point where you got to pivot or perish. And we had been playing kind of the same material for.
How many albums did you make?
2. Well, 1 EP and 1 LP. And
I watched a couple of your songs on YouTube.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool. The guitarist, I think this was like a thing, right? You had there's a song where he's playing a guitar that only has 3 strings.
Yeah. GGB is what we call it.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. And you think, okay, well, he's got some, like the White Stripes, he's got some constraints around what he can do, and it's going to make him kind of push a little bit. I thought that was pretty cool.
It is. And that was, kind of you got to break away from the humming and strumming, the normal stuff. You got to keep updating, especially in the entertainment world, because there's so much competing with your attention. And so after about 4 years, we needed to kind of change some things. But the lead guy was, he was kind of comfortable where he was, and we could have kind of gone, a little bit further. But the sax player wanted to do some other stuff, so he left. And we tried to bring in some other people, and then I was like, this is the time to make a difference. We got to totally change, because if we try to keep doing the same thing, we're going to start losing people. And that's what happened. We didn't really change enough drastically that we started to lose fans. And by that point, I've been out of the Navy, been retired for about 5 years, about 4 years. And I had enough of a grasp of, okay, this is the things I need to work on, that I was like, okay, I'm going back to grad school. So I still played a little bit on the side. We did some duo stuff, but now I was focused on going back to grad school for my MBA. That's what I did.
And how was that program?
It was good. I did it at Old Dominion University there, and because it was close, it was easy to get back. A lot of people in that area went to ODU, so we had planned to stay there for the long term. So it made sense, and the GI Bill covered it, so the cost was low. It was a dime, and the return was hopefully $1, and it was good. So
And did you do anything with that degree?
So yes. So I once I got. Actually, while I was in school, I had talked to a couple of business owners that needed someone to help do kind of due diligence on some business stuff. So it was small companies that were expanding and looking to do some different things, and I actually still work for them today. But they would. So I would, do like the analysis on it. Is this the right thing to do? They're a developer, so they would buy property, and then they would say, okay, what business can we put on here to make money, and then we'll turn it over. So I would do kind of the analysis of, if we do this, you take out a loan, here's all your initial costs. If you can keep your fixed variable costs, all that, then you can make a profit over a certain period of years, and then they would say, okay, let's do it. So yeah, more of a kind of a business analysis. Kind of work, and it's good work. And when you actually see something, one of the projects we did, and it made great money, and so I got to see all that develop, and so yeah, it was really interesting, especially to be able to kind of say, this is what I think is happening, and then you look at how close it actually did. It's not perfect, but it was good. It was a really it's a good thing.
And does that bring us up to present day?
Yeah. So, so when I was in grad school, my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was good being out of the military. Although the teams were great about that stuff, but because I was home every day, it was good that I could be there and kind of work, because it took like 2 years to go through it. From the time she was diagnosed, she had 3 or 4 surgeries, and then the chemo, and then the recovery from all that. It took about 2 years, and so I was home for all that. I was still going to school, but I could manage it because most of the stuff was at home, and so she went through that. And when we kind of got through that, it was still in the recovery stage. We kind of got into a rut because she just didn't have any energy. So we were staying at home all the time, watching TV, just eating 3 meals a day or whatever, and it just wasn't a lot of activity. And at one point, I was like, we need to break this cycle. And so we bought a small 16-foot camper, and I was like, we talked about this. We need to at least once a month just get out of the house. We didn't have a TV in it. It was just a nice. It was an Airstream base camp.
Oh dang!
And we're like, we just need to get out of the house at least once a month, just kind of get back, even if we just walk around a little bit. And there was a campground right there in Virginia. So we did that for about 2 years as she was recovering, just going out, just getting into nature, and just trying to get past that. And after doing that for 2 years, we were like, why aren't we doing this all the time? So we decided that this was about 15 months ago. We said, hey, let's just sell our house and get rid of all the extra cars and the extra furniture and stuff we have laying around. We'll get a bigger camper, because 16 feet is
That's small.
enough to live
How
in.
big is your new one?
30. We have a 30-foot
damn.
Airstream. Yeah. And so we traded that in, got the 30-foot, sold our place. It was a good time for the market. And so, yeah, for the past 15 months, we've just been touring around North America, just going from place to place, trying to hit a lot of the national parks. And, America is just such a beautiful place. And, growing up in the Navy, we traveled all over the place, but never really got to see a lot of the U.S. Even on training trips, you don't really get to see much. So, yeah, that's what we've been doing for the past 50 months. She retired totally after her chemo. She lost a lot of that drive. So we decided, why don't you take some time off? And I still do part-time work. It's all remote. They send me emails when they need stuff to do. Sometimes I take a business trip where I'll fly someplace and come back. But yeah, we've just been doing that and seeing people, like opportunity to be here and CU's one of the big benefits. But
And did you see any end in sight?
no, not right now.
Just going to keep rolling.
Just keep doing it. Every place we go, we say, hey, would we come back here to live? And there's some places we really like, but
What's the top of the list right now?
we really like Denver, Colorado. They have a really good blues scene. So I have my upright bass with me.
Takes up half your freaking vehicle.
It does take up a lot, but I have like my little space over by the bed. I can keep anything I want, and that's my music room. And but we when we go to these places, I look up blues jams and show up and get to play with some phenomenal people. And it's just part of just traveling around, meeting people, and seeing really friends and family. I got to see some family in Texas that some on her side that I'd never met before. And we've been married over 30 years. Friends, team, guys from the team that now live in all kinds of places, and we stay connected and say, hey, I'm going to be in from this time. If you got time, I'd love to see. If not, I understand. And so it's been awesome. It's been awesome.
Legit. And you're tracking this whole thing on Instagram.
Yeah, my wife runs most of that. It's takingleave_RV, and she posts every day because you know how important you got to. For social media, you got to be consistent.
Are you playing any bass riffs on your Instagram?
Yeah,
I think the people are going to want to hear that.
Yeah, she records it live and then posts it later. But yeah, when we go to these jams, I'm up there playing. So
check.
It's
well, that's outstanding. Hey, probably a good place to wrap it up. Echo Charles.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir, I do. So you ran back. Let's go back to high school, or
you
ran track. Did you do cross country?
Damn, you've been saving this question for freaking 2 hours and 45 minutes.
That's correct.
My school didn't have cross country. I think some of the other districts did, but my school was very somewhat in an urban area, so we had track. And again, most of the guys were sprinters, so we didn't have cross country, but we had long distance on the track, which is going 8 circles.
But cross country would have been your jam, though.
Yeah, I would have loved to do it, and of course I ran a lot outside of just track. But yeah, like today, another thing I try to do as we travel, I look for great runs, running places, and I've been kicking around a YouTube video because I carry a camera with me, and I kind of film little parts of the run. And then when I get back, I, of course, upload all that and then put together these 4 to 5 minute videos of, this is all kind of the data of the run. This is how far it is. This is the elevation. Is it a lot of hills? Is it straight? What kind of turf is it? Where do you park? Here's the address you want to use to get to a parking area. Is there support? Is there going to be a bathroom there or what? And so I've gotten about 30 runs done with the raw material. I just started kind of putting them together. I've got 4 completed, and I've got my process down to about 4 hours. So the first one took about a couple of days because I had to figure out the format.
That's like Echo's pace on making videos.
So now, yeah, I can get
Yes, sir.
5-6 minute video done in about 4 to 5 hours. So, you know, again, it's make it for a dime, sell it for $1. You know, if it takes me a couple of weeks to do one video, it's because you got to be consistent, as you know. You got to post consistently to get a good following.
Would you say that you're, as far as what you'd prefer as far as runs go, do you prefer the 2 mile, 1 mile, or 880 or 800 meter?
Yeah, so the half mile is not a distance run. I don't know who, that's a sprint.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys that are doing it are sprinting. And I don't know why it was like this, but I remember at the track meets, like the first run was the 2 mile. Then it was the 1 mile. Then the last one was an 880. So I've already run 2 races, and I'm wore out. And now you got to sprint the 880. So I like the distance running. Yeah. And the runs I do now are anywhere from 5 to 12 miles long.
Okay. What's your fastest mile?
Back in the day, so when I was running,
Back in the day,
when I was running marathons, then I could get down to a good around 7 minutes, a little over 7 minutes.
For a marathon?
For a marathon.
What about like when you were competing in track or whatever?
Yeah,
when you
so
ran the 1 mile?
that got down, I think, about a 6.5, somewhere around there. But I'm not doing that now. Now I'm more along for the ride.
Kind of like me.
I want to look at the things and kind of.
Hey, talking about YouTube, one last thing I want to talk about, or just at least explain. You made a really cool video about your grandfather.
Yes,
that was pretty cool. That people might want to check out.
Yeah, I attribute that to really to you, Jocko. Listen to this podcast. One of my favorite things is when you have guys from World War II, Korea, the Vietnam, and just the stories that they tell, and everybody's got a story. And when I hear that, I remember my grandfather. Actually, both of them, both served in World War II. Excuse me. But my one grandfather was just a very introverted, and he was in the Army. He was in the mechanized in tanks, and he went over as a replacement for the it was the 81st Tank Battalion, and but he never talked about it. When I was growing up, I would spend summers working on the farm with him, and he never mentioned it. And at that time, I didn't know what to ask for, or tell me about the war. And but he never talked. But it wasn't like it's just me. He'd never talked about it with his kids or his family. It was just a part of his life that was kind of in the past, and just never talked about it. So. And he passed away in the early 90s. When about a year or so ago, my aunt brought me his old photo albums from that time, and it also had all of his military paperwork in it. Which, you think of our field jackets are pretty thick. Back then, it was like a page or two. I mean, there wasn't much at all.
Like go to war, cool your home. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. And so because of my time, I was able to look at these and kind of understand. All right, so he was at this unit at this time, and he was actually in the 4th Cav back when they had horses.
Damn.
So to think about that time of when your main asset was a horse. This animal that has its own personality, and you think of what we drive today, and but that that's part of your main thing. So so I was able to come up with a timeline of where he was, what units he was in. Then I spent some time just reading books on it. So finding books about that unit overall. Reading about that time, reading about the operations to kind of get a better idea of what he did or what he may have done, because I don't know for sure. He never told me, but I was able, especially on the internet, I was able to find some after action, like their monthly reporting from that unit when he was over in Germany as they were pushing to the Rhine, and of course. I've written plenty of after action reports. You can kind of read between the lines sometimes, but it had great data. And I was able to kind of take all of his pictures that he had in his albums, digitize them, and then go kind of walk through the store using all these external sources and say, okay, this is, you know, where he would have been during this time. This is what happened during that time. So he was probably on this cavalry march, or he was probably in the tanks when they got hit on this. So I kind of found the one day that he probably was in combat for the first time, you know, where they first took casualties. And again, I don't know for sure, but I was able to kind of create a timeline. So I created a video of all of his pictures. So when I'm doing the voiceover and I'm telling the stories, they're showing pictures of kind of that period of time, and so you kind of get an idea. And I totally just did it for my family because they didn't have really any stories from him. And I set kind of a deadline to have it by Veterans Day. I missed it by a little bit, but I wanted to do it before the holidays, so when they were with their kids, they could watch it with them and kind of understand who their grandfather was and where he came from. And that's what you saw.
What's the YouTube channel that's on?
So it's on my personal channel, but his name is Everett Weiss. I think the name of the file or the video is, you know, Corporal Everett Weiss. So if you
spell Weiss, W-E-I-S-S?
W-I-E-S-E.
Oh, okay. So
it's German, but it's
completely wrong.
W-I-E-S. Yeah, Everett Weiss. W-I-E-S-E. But
yeah, I mean, one of our mutual friends sent that to me and told me to check it out. It's very cool. Awesome stuff.
If there's one thing I could say that I found that I don't like about this is, or
the nomad lifestyle.
The nomad, is the vagabond. It's because you're traveling around so much. You're moving. You know, we move every 2 weeks to a month. You really lose that kind of connection to a community. And for example, like for jiu-jitsu, before we did this, I was training, albeit I was, you know, white belt, no stripes. But and if I could, I give a shout out to Coastal BJJ there in Virginia Beach. Phenomenal gym. They were awesome. You know, a guy white hair coming in at 50. They took really, really good care of me. Nestor and the guys down there just awesome guys. And so I was training with them, and it was that community. But by doing this, you got to leave that. And I talked to him before I left. I was like, you know, what do you think? You know, can I just go to another gym and start working? And he said yes. But what I found, especially with COVID, it's tough to kind of show up for just a couple of weeks, and you know, nobody knows where you've been. And you know, I think a lot of gyms, especially like this, because it's such close contact, that you know, they kind of stay in their own, and it's tough to kind of be part of that community. And I think we're going to change that as we go through this lifestyle. We're finding that the first year and a half we've been jumping around so much that we kind of need to home base a little bit more. So we have a property down in Florida, and so our plan is for the winters we'll probably be there and spend about 5-6 months there, and then be kind of part of that community. And then for the summer, pick a place. Like I think this year we're going to go all the way up to Maine. Oh, sweet. We're going to hit those areas, and then maybe the next year go out, maybe back out to the West Coast like we did this year. Just
we're in Maine
to see people.
Farmington, Maine. Go up to the Origin Factory. You know the deal. You got people to train jiu-jitsu with. Come to the camp. We have camp in August.
Okay,
it's freaking awesome.
Actually, I might be there.
Yeah,
during that time.
Come on up, man.
Okay,
it's awesome. I mean, it's so cool. There's several hundred people there from all over the world to train jiu-jitsu, hang out. It's great. Yeah.
Now again, I'm white belt.
There's all kinds of white belts there.
Okay.
It's no factor.
All right.
No factor at all. Come and get it.
All right.
That'd be freaking legit.
I'll look for those dates.
Right on. Any other closing thoughts, man?
Yeah. Thanks to my wife that supports all of this this crazy thing that we do, and she's my best friend, and we've been married coming up on 31 years, and just no one else that I'd want to do this with. So really appreciate her.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for sharing your stories. Thanks for sharing your lessons. Thanks for your service to the country, to the Navy, to the teams, and thanks for being someone I'll always be able to call friend, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so Chris, he's gone. He stepped out. You may have heard people say there's no standard day in the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. You don't have, hey, this is just a normal day. But what I think this highlights is there's just no kind of standard career. There's so many different directions things can go that you're just going to have a different experience. And what's cool is you can have some control over that experience. You have the capability of adjusting. I mean, you look at Giff and I, came in at the same time. We're in the same BUDS class. We kind of like the same we're on the same path, and yet he's speaking Vietnamese. We both became radio men, but he's speaking Vietnamese. Just all these different things happen. He ends up like doing the advanced special operations stuff. It's just different things happen, and you just get different experiences. So it's that, to me, is a benefit to joining the military. And I can only really say this with 100% certainty about the SEAL teams because that's where I spent my time. But most of the military, everyone I talk to, it's the same thing. It's like a choose your own adventure book. Yeah. The chances that somebody else chooses the same adventure as you is very small.
Yeah.
So awesome to talk to Chris and hear his, because he's a friend. This is the other thing that's crazy thing about the SEAL teams. Like, your friends come and go. Mm-hmm. And you may not see a guy for, like, when I saw him downstairs, I don't think I've seen him for probably 15 years. 15 years. He hit me up, like, got my number, whatever, and he's like, hey, Jocko, I'm in town. I'm like, oh, cool. You want to come hang out? You want to be on the podcast? He'd be like, oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. I listen to it all the time. So but no, like, well, how have you been? No, because it's you have this shared common background.
Yeah.
And then with that shared common background, your friends, you're like, cool. I have friends I don't talk to. If I saw them tomorrow, I'd be like, hey, no factor. Like, no factor. That's the other, no one, there's no, hey, you didn't call me.
Yeah.
No one expects you to call me. Don't expect me to call you. Yeah. I'm not calling you. You're not going to call me. Cool. But if you need something, call me.
Yeah.
Call me. You don't have to call me. You don't have to prep. Call me. You don't have to you have to send me birthday cards, whatever. You need me? Cool. I'll show up. Or you're in town? Give me a shout. We'll go roll. We'll see what's up.
It does go to show too how, like, it's almost like if you put it into perspective where you have people with such different backgrounds and then they kind of can converge on this Navy SEAL journey. They get washed up and filtered out, and then they get kind of spit out into their, common interests for sure and common goals, but in such different ways. Like, if you talk to, how you say, like, Navy SEALs don't have a stereotype, or you think they have a stereotype.
You think they do, but they don't.
But they don't, yeah. This is like a really good example because, I'm talking to him. He's like a super nice, kind of introverted person, and then now talk to you. You're like, no way that they were like kumpods in the team. Like, it doesn't make sense.
And
had the exact different.
And had the exact same job.
Yeah.
And hung out and did stuff together. Yeah.
I know, bro. And then, so, like, I'm trying to imagine, like, every time everyone talks, like, when they tell their story, I always try to kind of put myself, like, I wonder how they were, like what they looked like. I see them in front of me now, but what did they look like, the young version of them?
You know what Giff looked like? He looked exactly like that, man. He looked exactly the same.
Just darker hair, probably.
He had darker hair, but he looked the same. There's almost the same build. I mean, I'm bigger than I was. Like, when we went through BUDS, when we started BUDS, I was 174. I'm 230 right now. Yeah, he probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood. Well, I don't know what he weighed in BUDS, but he looks about the same.
Yeah.
And sure, does he have a couple more wrinkles? Whatever. Yeah. We all do. But looks about the same.
Yeah. So you imagine him, like, just functioning, I can't imagine him yelling at nobody. To me, he's just like this super friendly person, but I'm sure he was like getting after it the way everyone else was. It's weird. That contrast is real weird. Yeah. It's fun, interesting.
It is. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Oh, it's always good to talk to your old friends and see where they're at, see what they're up to, and maybe there's a chance they're playing stand-up bass in a blues band.
Actually, I'll say this in a second. What did hit me at one point, when you're talking about when one of your superiors was like, if you're really hardcore, you're gonna go with no ground pad or whatever.
All you're gonna bring is a poncho and a poncho liner.
Yeah. So and you just fell
worst
for it.
Advice ever.
Well.
Or was it?
Or what? Yeah, in a way, it was like it fulfilled itself, right, as a thing.
No ground pad is a problem. Yeah. By the way, after that, like I never go in the field without a ground pad. I never go in the field without a wool beanie. And I did have a wool beanie, but that saved me. And I never go in the field without my Gore-Tex jacket. Because worst case scenario, you put on a Gore-Tex jacket, a beanie, man, and a ground pad, you're going to be able to like last a lot longer with a lot more comfort. If you don't have those things, you're screwed.
So you learned your lesson.
Lesson was learned.
Was it that experience that made you
ground pad? 100%.
Okay, so to me, what was funny? I mean, good, and that's good for sure. But what struck me the most, what stood out, is like, you know who you're like. You watch Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the movie, but I can't say I know the plot.
So.
Because I'm not a freaking dork like you.
So Marty McFly, right? The main guy, Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
His weakness was if you call him chicken. He'll do the dumbest stuff. All you got to do is call him chicken. And that's like a theme throughout all the, that in fact, like later on, that's like why he like ruins his career.
Someone questions my being hardcore.
You're the exact same. You're Marty McFly. But instead of chicken, it's freaking hardcore.
Yeah.
Well, not hardcore, sorry.
Yeah. I would say, especially when I was... Well,
no, you're still like that, bro. You're still like that.
True.
Yeah. If in fact now you're smarter though, I think I'm assuming. But so that, like if I were to be like, hey Jocko, it would be like, hey Jocko, like do this. If you're hardcore, like you would do this, right? Something that you maybe didn't want to do or you said no to or something like that. If I said it that straightforward, you'd know what I'm doing and you'd figure it out and be like, hey, I'm not gonna fall for that. But if I just hinted at it.
If you use the indirect approach.
Maybe took a couple of days to maybe, like plant seeds and stuff like that. Oh, I think I could get you fully to do some stuff. I don't know what.
There's nothing wrong with getting people to do stuff. I like it. I appreciate it. A little bit of peer pressure in a positive way. Let's go with it,
Have I ever told you about the cliff on Kauai on Shipwreck's Beach?
No.
Actually, I think you know what? No, I'm gonna retract what I was about to. I was about to say I could get you to jump off that cliff, but
yeah,
you'd probably jump off that cliff.
Show
anyway.
it to me.
Yeah, it's not.
And I'm
jumping
off.
That scary.
How many feet is it?
It's not. It's put it this way. It's high, but not super high. So
is it over 100 feet?
No.
Okay.
It was like so the last time I jumped was the last time I went, and I hadn't jumped for like a long time, probably like 8 years maybe. It's like when you're young, you jump. It's fun. It's a little bit of a swim, maybe 100-meter swim back then.
Give me an estimate on the height.
35 maybe.
Bruh.
Put it this way. I went to jump.
Throw that at me as a challenge.
I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you haven't jumped there, it's like it can be intimidating. And people jump off there because they see other people. Because everyone on the beach can see you jump. The cliff kind of wraps around, and the beach is literally like a audience.
Yeah.
Perfect like spot. Sure. So when you jump, everyone watches you, right? So
Tulsa used to do that. Tulsa used to go jump off that beach when she was a water woman. She used to put the cape on back in HI.
Sure. This is on Kauai, by the way. So when you go up there, it does two things. One, it makes you want to like jump when you see other people. It's like, oh, that's fun. That'll be an adventure, right? You go up. But another thing that it does is when you go up there and you stand at the edge, everyone's watching, so you can't turn back and walk down. Because you can be like, oh, you're the guy who walked down. You're going. Yeah, you're going. So I went with my 15-year-old nephew, and he was like, I want to do it this time. So I'm like, cool. And he jumps, but before we jumped, there were these people up there. They didn't live there. So they're like, oh, are you guys going to jump? And we're like, yeah. They're like, oh, okay. Kind of like it was a bad idea. So I was like, she was like, oh, our friend is still in the hospital because he broke his back yesterday jumping off. Oof. So I was like, dang. So it's high enough to break your back, but it depends on who you are.
It also depends on what you hit. I mean, this person that broke their back hit the bottom.
No.
Is it not deep? So
No,
they're not
steep.
breaking their back from just a regular jump if they're a normal person at 35 feet, bro.
That's
There's some
literally
other elements into this story that we're hearing.
Here's what they said. He was 50 years old.
Okay, I'm 50 years old. I'm not breaking my back jumping off
No,
that thing.
I believe 100% you're not breaking your back when you can. But you're not the average 50-year-old person. And if you land a certain way, like, oh yeah, you can break your back, I think. And then not the kind he broke his back and he was like done. He like, had a fractured one of his vertebrae in this way. He was in the hospital for more than a day though. So,
well, weird things can happen when it comes to injuries. That's true. I got to
can.
take that into account. Don't want to be talking too much smack over here.
Plus, you got to be careful. But in your case, I just call you not hardcore, and you'll do anything. So whatever.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with good old Giff and me. If you want to help us out with supporting what we're doing, check out JockoFuel.com. We got some tasty goodness on there, which is a weird thing. You say first thing people think about when they think of supplements, they're not generally thinking like, oh, tasty. Sometimes they even don't think tasty.
Yeah.
The first thing I said was tasty.
Yep.
Why? Because milk.
It's a front runner, right?
Because milk is a front runner. It's a front runner in food to take into your body and enjoy that process.
It's true. Cool, man. They're gonna help you.
Remember the freaking protein shakes back in the day?
Yeah.
They were so bad. I was on an ARG platoon on a ship, and we had the latest and greatest, and everyone had it. And it tasted so bad. It was vanilla. I remember I used to have to hold my nose because I was on the train, right? We were doing this stuff. We're trying to get jacked.
Eating it.
I would hold my nose and do it like I'm doing a shot of tequila. So that's not what we want. We want to have a good taste.
Or remember the old school freaking Mega Mass 5 million or whatever, the one in the big dog food bag or whatever. That tasted good, but I think it had like boatloads of like sugar.
Yeah, it was
and
just
like
straight up,
like
straight up bad for you.
Technically had more protein or whatever.
Well, they were also like, hey, this is for gaining mass.
Right, yeah.
So we're literally just going to give you sugar, fat, protein, just whatever. We're just going to throw it in there, make it taste good. Yeah. Hey, more power to you. If you're a hard gainer, remember that back in the day? You got the hard gainer coming in hot. Yeah. And then what's the 3 body types, right? Yeah. Mesomorph, ectomorph. What's the other one? Endomorph.
Yeah.
Right, there you go. So they'd have those little graphs, maybe you need.
Is that a real thing now?
I have no idea. I think it is a thing, but I don't know what determines that thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know if you know what? Let's face it. There's some truth to it because there's some dudes that I know that would just eat pizzas and whatever, and they're lean.
Yep, that's true.
So they might be the hard gainer.
Yeah.
And then some people, doesn't matter if they lift or not, they're kind of jacked.
Yep.
I've known people like that.
One of my friends.
And I know some people that work out like crazy, and they don't look like it, and they can even be strong, and even be fast, but they still look like kind of dumpy.
Yeah, that is true.
So I guess the thing is a thing.
Yeah.
So we got to watch out for that one.
Yeah, that's true. I literally know someone like immediately comes to mind for every single one of those. That's interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, you got to watch out for that, of course. So know your body type, right? Also, speaking of taste good, the energy drinks, healthy energy drinks too, by the way.
Which is a rare thing.
Very rare.
Kind of a unique thing. Yep. Get some of those. And you can get this stuff at JockoFuel.com. You can get it at Wawa. You can get the drinks at Wawa. You can get all the stuff at Vitamin Shop as well. So check that out. Also, if you need some jiu-jitsu gear, which you probably do, go to originusa.com. And what's cool is we started with jiu-jitsu gear, but now we're making just straight gear for your life. Jeans, T-shirts, hoodies, boots, whatever you need, we got it. So check some of that out.
The jeans, and I don't know why these ones struck me so hard or whatever. It's the new jeans that they're coming out with. They're like green or something. The one that Pete said the next one's going to be camo.
Their work pants, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I do the work.
Actually, I'm not sure which one I know you're talking about.
I'm pretty sure
I know you don't do the work that's required. It's called work.
Those kind of pants. but I do want the pants.
You're disqualified for work pants across the board. Right.
Yeah, if they got any padding in the knee, let's face it, that padding's not going to get any action.
No use
for my work.
That's for damn sure.
But nonetheless, for people who do work, these are both functional and aesthetic. Man, I'm looking at them, And I want them, you know, just for the look alone. And then I know they're probably more functional than they look good. So that's saying a lot.
OriginUSA.com. Go and get yourself some gear. And by the way, support an American company that's rebuilding American manufacturing and helping American communities and workers. That's what we're about. That's what, because if we weren't about that, guess what we'd be doing? Hiring some slave labor overseas in China to make everything for us and make a little bit more profit. Make a little bit more profit. Hey, we can stuff a little bit more money in our pockets over here.
Sure.
To rip it out of the hearts of the American worker. We're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. So, OriginUSA.com. Go check it out. There you go.
It's true. Also, when you're in the mood to represent on this path, hey, look, we're capable. Which kind of reminds me, you know how like, and some of the guests will have this where they'll talk about like their background or whatever, and then, you know, they went through this, they went through that. They already have this certification or this, you know. It like makes you think, man, those certifications, and there's a lot of them available, by the way.
Like certifications?
Yeah, like Giff mentioned
who's a paddy diver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before he even joined the Navy, maybe.
Yeah, and he wasn't even really
I never dove on scuba gear until I was in the Navy.
Yeah, see, and that's one that I always was like, man, that'd be a cool one to, because I grew up diving.
Wait, did you dive?
Yeah, I grew up diving.
Scuba diving?
No, never.
So snorkeling.
Free diving, we call it.
Yeah.
Wait, who was it? Micah, right? Was talking about free diving?
Micah, yeah. And we didn't even go into that. He was some kind of world-class...
Bro, my younger brother, Yata Charles, he is heavy, not so much anymore, he has kids and all that stuff now, but he's heavy into free diving, spearfishing, all this stuff. Really good, too. One of his friends,
Did you know who Michael was?
I don't know. That's why I want to kind of ask him.
Yata.
Yeah, man. And one of his friends actually, I think, still holds the record of the deepest free dive. If I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure. He showed me the video. It's freaking crazy. Nonetheless, I know a little bit about free diving. And scuba diving has always been like kind of like, oh man, that'd be a cool one to have. You can just stay down there and breathe. See what I'm saying?
The kind of dive rig that you eventually end up using in the SEAL teams, which is called a rebreather.
Sure. And
it has no bubbles.
Yeah.
And when you're down there, it just like quiets, like.
Yeah.
It's not like a normal when you're scuba diving with a normal what's called an open circuit rig. It's like it's all noisy. There's bubbles everywhere.
You don't like that,
and I don't like it at all. And I've spent way more. I've probably spent 100 times more in my life on Draeger.
What's
Draeger's the rebreather. Then open circuit. Open circuit, you basically do it in buds. You get qualified. And then as soon as you're done with that, you go on closed circuit. And that's where you dive for the rest of your career. Yeah. Maybe every once in a blue moon you dive open circuit. I think I dove open circuit on a ship one time to like clear some seaweed out of something or something like this. But
have you ever gone scuba diving in any capacity after you retired from the Navy?
No.
Would you? Like, is that your jam? Like, would you?
If I could get a rebreather?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like just to go or what? Or go spearfish?
If I was like, let's say we went back to Hawaii and we were just going to go diving.
Hell yeah.
And I could use a rebreather, I'd probably look into it, maybe do it.
Are rebreathers like available, or is that
they
just
are? But I don't know what the rules are. You know,
bro, they're not available. They're like plutonium.
No, they are available. I've looked at it. You can buy one, $5,000 or $6,000.
Oh, damn.
You know,
how much is a regular scuba rig? Like a middle of the road.
I would guess $1,500 for the whole thing if you went over to the dive shop and hooked it up.
Yeah. Huh. But that seems like, to me anyway, that seems like a cool little just certification you can just decide to go
it's a good
get.
Thing to know how to do.
Just like even like the guns thing, like, you know, how to, you know, those kind of certifications, just have more capability overall. You just choose plenty.
Yeah, and there's people that chase those little qualifications, right?
Yeah, and I dig it.
Yeah.
Cool. But I mean, of course, just like anything else, it's like, you know, if you don't want to do it for nothing, they got to be applicable, I would think, anyway.
Yeah.
But it's better to have the capability and certification than
Let's
not.
build capability is what we're saying.
You know which one I randomly got? It's not random; it's for a reason. But it seems like you would never just think to go get it. But once you kind of think about it for a second, it's like super duper useful. Is CPR?
Yeah,
I'm CPR certified.
Dude, did you put that on your resume for this job?
I'm just saying, if you black out or something like this, I got you, brother. That's what I'm saying.
Dude, I didn't know. I'm dealing with a highly qualified individual.
I told you it's small, but it's one of those things you can just get, and it's better to have. Better to have than not have.
You brought that up,
bro. I'm just saying, it's one of those things.
What did you like apply to college? Go get that degree in CPR. Check. All right, so there you go.
Are we
if
done? Are we
you're
done?
down, if you go down, remember, text Echo Charles. He'll come and give you CPR. He's qualified. It's like a 15-minute class, bro.
Bro, I don't even know why I tell you these things. I don't know why I tell you anything.
I don't know why you do either. That's redonkulous.
Either way,
yeah.
if you want to represent while you're on the path, CPR certified or not, go to jockostore.com.
Jack.
You can get your Discipline Equals Freedom shirts and hats. And there's a lot of good stuff on there. Check it out. If you want something, get something to represent.
Don't forget, we got some other podcasts too. We got the Jocko Unraveling with Daryl Cooper. We got the Grounded Podcast, Warrior Kid Podcast. We got Jocko Underground. That's a huge way to support. There's people getting banned. You got, what just happened? Neil Young told Spotify, get Rogan off.
Oh, yeah.
Get him off.
Straight up ultimatum.
And guess what happened?
What?
Did you see the outcome?
Uh-uh.
Neil Young's off Spotify. we should say we want Joe Rogan off Spotify.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna have to get us off. They'll be like, who are you? But listen, that's a scenario that happened.
Yeah.
Luckily, Spotify made the call to keep Joe Rogan because Neil Young, cool. I don't know if that happened to Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young as well. I don't know if he screwed over all of his old bandmates too. You know, who knows what happened there.
Yeah.
Good old Neil Young. But you jacked it up, son. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if somebody's going to come on the Apple and we don't know if some big band, if Neil Young's going to go on Apple and say, hey, take down Jocko podcast because I don't like what they're saying about CPR quals. So we don't know if that's gonna happen. So that's why we have Jocko Underground. So if you wanna get on board there, you wanna help us out. It costs $8.18 a month to come, and we have a podcast that we do there. A little bit of a project to pass more information. If you can't afford it, it's okay. Email assistance@jockounderground.com so you can be in the game. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out flipsidecanvas.com with Dakota Meyer. Check it out. I wrote a bunch of books. Check them out. I would say especially check out the kids' books. Most people know I've written some books, but some people don't know I wrote kids' books. Kids' books, keep them kids on the path. And also we have Echelon Front, which is our leadership consultancy. If you want to have us help you with your leadership, go to extremeownership.com and a online training platform. So look, a few years ago, if someone said, hey, I really want to learn about leadership, can you help me? I'd say, yeah, just listen to my podcast, man. And they'd be like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. And they'd listen. There's good information. Mm-hmm. But now there's 300 plus podcasts, and they're about war and they're about atrocities. And so the leadership lessons are strewn throughout. So this is one thing that we've done to sort of, hey, let's get these things into a consolidated curriculum where you can literally learn from step A through step Z. There you go. Go to extremeownership.com. A little story about the word strewn. Mm-hmm. So I got 3 daughters. The 2 older ones, they're very,
articulate.
Well, they also get hostile, right?
Sure, that too. Okay.
And they shared a room for a long time, and they still share a room when they're home. But one of them the older one wrote a message to the younger one that said, something along the lines of, listen, I just got home. I've been out all day working, and I just got home. And as soon as I walked into our room, I could barely get in there because you had your clothes and your stuff strewn about the floor. And I would really appreciate it if you come home and clean this up. Yeah. And my middle daughter replied, strewn. That's all she wrote back. So I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. Strewn. So now it's a joke inside of our family. If there's something been left out, then it's strewn about, and then the response is just straight up strewn
about.
And if you want to help service members, active and retired, go check out Mark Lee's mom, Mama Lee. She's got an awesome charity organization. If you want to donate or you get involved, go to americasmightywarriors.org. And if you need more of us, for whatever reason, we're on social, watch out for the algorithm. I'm not trying to draw you into the algorithm where that thing grabs a hold of your soul and drags you down, reading into comments and feeling bad about yourself and scanning to another screen and another one. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that. I'd rather you not do that. But if you feel like, oh, I got a question, I want to see what's happening, cool. We're on the gram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Echo's at Echo Charles. I am at Jocko Willink. And once again, if you want to hang out with Chris Gifford and his wife Julie, go to Instagram takingleave_RV. There you go. That's Julie and Chris. Who knows what they got going on out there in the world in an Airstream. What did it say, 30-foot Airstream?
Yeah,
that's a nice ride right there.
Yeah.
Nice ride.
Solid.
And speaking of Chris Gifford, just want to say thanks once again to Chris on his travels. He was nice enough to stop by. He was a silent professional in the teams and a pro, and appreciate it. Appreciate your service, and thanks for coming by. And to all the other vets out there, both the vets and also the folks that are still active duty manning the watch worldwide, thank you for your continued service. And to our police and law enforcement, of firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, dispatchers, correctional officers, Border Patrol, Secret Service, all the first responders, thanks for manning the watch here at home. And to everyone else, remember what Chris did with his life. He set a goal, and then he went out and he achieved it. And then he did that again and again and again, and that is a good plan. So go out there, come up with a goal, and execute by getting after it. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.